The reality war ended Doctor Who. This is the second series with Ncuti Gatwa. We're going to chat about it in, I guess, 3 discussions. Most of what you're about to hear was a conversation recorded 5 days after the reality war aired. That was between myself and Ingiga, and also Nate from the USA and Oliver from the UK. Everything was very fresh then, wasn't it, Gig? There was a very different mindset to discuss the finale in.
Yeah, things were a lot different than they are now, and we were all still, I think, reeling from the implications of what just happened. It was pretty seismic. We were kind of picking over the details of what exactly happened there, what might have been shot later, kind of where did plans change, and we weren't maybe looking with quite so much of a long view.
Yeah, so that's the bulk of this whole discussion, is that about 2 hours and half an hour added onto that. Then we have an addendum of about 45 minutes, Gig and myself and Missy from New Zealand, and that was recorded in December 2025, 5 days between the war between the land and the sea started. And that one is, like Gig kind of suggested there, a bit of a longer view, because we had many more months to chew over the finale and the kind of odd space the show was in after it. I think it was worth having that discussion, especially capturing the show a little bit before the spin-off started, wouldn't you say, Gig?
Definitely.
We're going to put a bit of a hat on a hat at the very end of the discussion by having a shorter addendum to the addendum. Again, that's being recorded, well, we're literally recording it right now, a few weeks out from the year anniversary of the reality war releasing, in which Gig and I will ruminate on the effects of the finale for a final time, I suppose. But right now, we're going to take you back a year into the past, right after the reality war aired, a couple of days after it aired, and we'll discuss it then. The reality war ends the 2025 season 2 of Doctor Who. It ends the run of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor. In the words of its writer, Russell T. Davis, it ends, quote, a mad series. I'm very proud of it. The Doctor's life has always been wrapped around children, actually from the moment he appeared on Ruby Road. And he even saved Ruby as a baby, so that's been ticking away as a theme. It draws every single plot together. It's a 2-year Doctor, so everything comes to a climax. End quote. So yeah, this was the big climax. Talking about it is myself, Neo from Australia, Ingiga from England, Oliver from England, Nate from the USA. I think for this one, we should start by talking about things we liked about this finale. So does anyone want to go first with things they liked about the reality war?
No.
On the whole, I generally liked the scenes where Ruby/Millie Gibson was the focus. So that would include her trying to talk to Conrad, and her, towards the ending and the climax, her witnessing the disappearance of the coat, and also, I guess, generally her trying to convince the Doctor that he's horribly wrong to be dismissing and laughing at her in the way that he is. I generally, obviously, I don't need to say again, I thought Millie Gibson's one of the highlights of this era. So I think it was a good instinct to give her some of the proper emotional material, stuff that actually sounds like it's got, has some drama in there. I enjoyed watching those scenes. I think if you did a supercut of this episode that was mainly just Ruby, I think it would be fairly solid, or at least give the appearance of like pretty solid television.
I just want to say, thank you for inviting me on the Who Cares episode for the last ever episode of Doctor Who. I imagine I'm going to be on the liking this episode more end of the spectrum of the 4 of us, because there's lots of bits I don't hate. I really like the moment of when he gets back to the house, 15 takes off his suit jacket and drops it, and suddenly he's back in full Doctor outfit. And the music there's really cool.
Yeah.
It takes the descending 5-note motif that they've used all through the era, and it turns it back so it's now an ascending motif, so it's going upwards as he's suddenly magically in his Doctor outfit. I think that bit's really cool. And there's lots of little bits like that where there's moments of like high concept character-based innovation. And I love all that stuff. It's a shame about the thing overall.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in general with Regeneration episodes, I feel like they try to bring some kind of gravitas to it, and so a lot of the final half of the episode really worked for me. And there were other bits that I liked as well, but I think it just didn't really cohere. Like I don't understand. I feel like a couple more passes in writing or editing, and this could have been like a really great cohesive story, even setting aside the first half. But it didn't quite come together for me. So I left with a pretty sour taste in my mouth.
Something I liked on the topic of it being a Regeneration episode, like you mentioned, Nate, that even though it was clearly kind of a scrambling sort of last minute kind of decision, I did like the fact that they put Anita in the episode from Joy to the World.
Yeah.
Like I have qualms with how she was actually implemented, but I think the fact of her being there, I think was nice, because Joy to the World was, I guess, the rare episode in this era that kind of slowed down to give the Doctor, like Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor, some genuine kind of character stuff. I mean, even though it was sort of regurgitated in a lot of ways, the Doctor takes a slow path, it was nonetheless, Moffat put a little bit of a different spin on it. The Doctor's actually good at living the slow path this time, and he makes a genuine friendship with Anita. So if you're going to pick a character to come back in his final episode, and obviously Rogue is off the table because his hell dimension is sliding into the pit, I think Anita would be a pretty good choice.
I think it gives the era a lot of shape to bring so much Joy to the World stuff back into it. It's not like Anita has a cameo. She's a pretty important part of the episode. The Time Hotel in general is. 15's Regeneration music is from when Joy's mum, COVID, death, star, ending scene thing. So there's lots of Joy connections, which kind of makes it feel like it does feel pretty slapdash the last 15-ish, 20-ish minutes in terms of, the wider era. But I think using so much Joy stuff kind of does make it feel like a Twice Upon a Time-esque. We're really rounding everything off. So I think maybe accidentally, I don't know, all the decisions that went into using so much Joy to the World stuff, but I think it really makes it kind of work as 15's last episode.
About the music, I do kind of like when the Regeneration theme isn't the obvious one. Like, they didn't play 11th Doctor theme, I Am the Doctor, when he regenerated. They used like a reprise from Rings of Akaton, for example. I like when they pick a moment that actually has some significance. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of what they did with the 12s in kind of replaying Shepherd's Boy there. I don't think that quite worked, but the instinct is the right one. So I like what they did here.
I think Gold's reasoning has always been since the 11th Doctor's regeneration is he picks his favourite piece he's done that he can sort of graft meaning onto. Like the Akatem moment is a big sacrifice, so it makes sense that the regeneration's like that. And then Shepherd's Boy is all about, dying and getting up and starting again, which sort of grafts on. And here the whole regeneration is bizarrely, I thought, framed by Joy to the World. It sort of segues into being a complete Joy to the World riff right at the end. But the music for that bit is really great, so I didn't mind.
Other things, Cherry and Carla in this, I like them. That was nice. Cherry had some funny lines.
I would have liked more of them, but that's a constant for me through this era. It's got relatively little.
The broadest overall story of this is a 2-part finale, I think, is really interesting in an emotional way. Nothing to do with the Rani or Omega. I could not care less about any of that stuff. But the idea that this is a story about the first half is sort of about the Doctor coming out and that breaking the world, and the second half is sort of about the Doctor coming to terms with not being able to have a kid, like in the context of having just come out. And that breaking the world. And that is a really interesting shape for a finale, and it's the kind of story you couldn't have told with a previous Doctor, not in the same way. Like, other Doctors could have done the same angst about parenthood, but not from this angle. It's really interesting and specific, I think, and gets really muddy and messy in the details in a way that doesn't quite work. But that broadest, like, stepping back and squinting at the emotional story of this finale, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I think the tension from having your really overtly queer-coded Doctor and then doing a story which is all about us finally doing this, or having a go at breaking this taboo of the Doctor fathering a child, which I think it doesn't actually really end up breaking that taboo because it doesn't really have him raising the child or fathering, conceiving the child. But I mean, they're never going to have him actually conceive a child in a normal fashion. But I do think that the idea of it and the tensions it generates are pretty interesting ones. Like, it's not just Doctor having a child, it's gay Doctor having a child in this weird kind of lavender marriage situation and having to sort of embrace that either way. So yes, it is. It's more specific than either of those two things on their own.
The whole thing seems to have this relationship to heteronormativity, where it goes, yes, heteronormativity is a prison, but also I sort of want some of those things anyway. Like, Belinda still wants to be a mum, and the Doctor still wants to be a dad, despite the fact that it was previously enforced on them against their will. Now they're out of it, they sort of still want it anyway, and that's weird and nuanced in a way that I find interesting. It then sort of creates some fires in the rest of the episode and some really quite appalling implications. But as drama, I'm curious.
On the note of the heteronormative world kind of being a bad thing, but also there being aspects that we want. I mean, they reprise in that scene with Ruby and Conrad. Conrad brings up what the Doctor told him at the end of Lucky Day. And I remember when that episode came out, we were all like, oh my God, I can't believe Pete McTighe would write this like soulless neoliberal propaganda, or this is Putinesque, whatever. And someone, and I'm still, pretty scornful of all that, but they kind of bring it back in this interesting scab picking sort of way, which suggests more ambivalence about that idea of everyone just being safe and warm and fed. Because obviously they hedge their bets a little with Conrad. The implication that Conrad, I guess, maybe misinterpreted the Doctor, or his mummy issues, his kind of abusive upbringing, factored into him trying to give everyone a family, his lack of a father figure, things like that. But even just like bringing it up and implying even a little bit that the Doctor's high and mighty speechifying actually has like we don't need to uncritically just invest in it. I thought that was a nice bit of nuance again.
Yeah, there's lots of, all the way through, there's lots of moments where the sort of overt, repressive, sort of faux fascism of Conrad's world and the Riley Omega stuff is sort of like half compared to the stuff that Unit and the Doctor have been doing and their authoritarian streak. And it never... There's some weird stuff in the disability camp plotline which just vanishes completely from this episode. And how that gets replaced with the big institutionalized Unit plotline, which feels like queasy and gross in a way that is maybe on purpose, but and the same with that Lucky Day line where we all clocked the Doctor as being horrid and authoritarian in that example, but here it sort of gets recontextualized, but not completely.
We probably all like this because everyone liked this, I think. 15, Belinda handing Poppy's coat back and forth as they're talking. The way that's shot, Ruby noticing what's going on. It's a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, I love it, particularly when the coat finally disappears, just the last scrap of fabric. It's like a magic trick. Like Ncuti kind of rubs his hands together and it's just gone. I love that moment. That's really... I do... it's one of those moments that just makes me kind of even more frustrated in a way, because I think a televisual moment like that, an image like that, is stunning. And I feel like it's the invention of someone who has masterstrokes in them. Right? So like whatever criticisms I may have, like that's such a good idea. And it makes me not want to, sack Russell T Davies and kill the show. It's like I want to keep having moments like that. I just wish I could just get those and not kind of a lot of the stuff around it. Because that moment is really, really something horribly magical about it. And in a way, even the aspects of it I don't like so much. So I feel like the Doctor and Belinda's dialogue when they're passing the coat and they're acting when they're passing the coat, it feels kind of weirdly fake. But in a way that also works because we're looking at it from Ruby's point of view and they actually do seem like strangers because their memories are being wiped before our eyes. So it's actually horrifying in a way that it should be. And I really appreciate a moment like that where suddenly the heroes of our show look kind of wrong and awful and unfamiliar to us because something so horrid has happened. I really like that instinct.
There's the drift in the dialogue itself that they start talking about the places they're going to take Poppy. And just as the coat slowly disappears, they're not talking about her anymore. They're just talking about where they want to go next. And it happens so slowly as the thing's going on. It's just, the unification there of the scene writing and the action. And it's lovely.
The music there is great as well.
And the music, and then, I mean, Ruby worked so well as a point of view character in that scene. I thought the way she acted that was great, and the dialogue afterwards was good as well. That whole the sort of sinking realization that it's sort of like gaslighting in a way, right? But everyone telling her no, that maybe your memory is just bad. I thought that was really pretty well acted.
I almost wondered as that scene was happening, if they were just going to leave it like that and have that be the tragic kind of heartbreaking ending. Whether Poppy's just gone and Ruby's the only one who knows. That would have been so cruel. A sick part of me would have sort of enjoyed that. I get why, obviously, they did not do that.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get on to sort of dissecting the reshoots stuff later. But I think, having looked at it a little bit, I think that might have been the original ending before the Regeneration reshoots. So in that scene, the Doctor winks at Ruby. She's saying, there was a kid here 2 seconds ago, and the Doctor goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he throws her a little wink. And looking closely at that scene, I think Gat was sort of playing it a little bit like he's lying. Which has led me to believe, I think everything after that scene is completely reshot, which has led me to believe that the original ending was that Belinda forgets, Ruby disappears, the Doctor and Ruby are the only people who remember, but the Doctor doesn't really let on that he remembers, and then we all go for a dance party and the Doctor dances because he's sad. I think, having done a little bit of reconstruction here, I think that might have been how the episode ended.
That would make sense of the dance party, because I have wondered how the hell would you do the dance party if Belinda knows Poppy's missing and the Doctor's supposed to be looking for her? Why would they be dancing? I mean, it's kind of a Let's Kill Hitler problem all over again, isn't it? Where's my daughter, Doctor? Literally, I'm just too busy fucking around with Hitler. So yeah, maybe your version would sort of make sense. I do kind of struggle to believe that RTD would actually just leave this child deleted. Maybe he would have played it as a setup for season 3 or something, but I don't know.
I don't know if you guys would have, but I liked the scene where the unit tower is spinning around and lasering everything, and the Doctor gets on the Ranis vehicle and is flying around and the theme's blaring. I like that. And then I also like the cut to Belinda silently in the vaults thing. I thought that whole thing was pretty fun and then funny.
I'm surprised you liked that. I liked it. I think basically I sort of get the vision with moments like that. I see the appeal why RTD wants the show to have sequences of exaggerated, extreme sort of comic book kind of fantasy madness in there. So the fact that the bone beasts are hollow skeletons so the Doctor can fly straight through them with his scooter, right? That's one of those sort of really fun kind of games playing with imagery and kind of action that they can do, I guess, when you're in this completely free-form fantasy world. And I get the desire to put sequences of mad spectacle. So not just prosaic spaceship shooting at other spaceship, but stuff that's actually quite outlandish and artistic and fun and freewheeling. I completely get that. I mean, I'm not sure it's necessarily worth the kind of sacrifices involved, but I certainly enjoyed that. And that jump cut to Belinda with the music cutting out, that was very fun as well.
It was a good jump cut, but I'm kind of surprised you guys like that. I really hated that.
Yeah, the cutting to Belinda and the music just cuts out completely and we're in silence. It's it's a successful artistic encapsulation of an evil story. It's a great way of depicting that Belinda's not in the plot anymore because she's mothering a child. And so Doctor Who doesn't apply to her, the music doesn't apply. She's literally not in the universe of the show anymore. I didn't like the Bone Beast stuff. I don't like them. I was bored by them. They're big bone boys.
But she was provoking them. She was provoking the bone beasts.
She was provoking the Bone Beasts in the Bone Palace.
There's something I half like. I would have liked it more if it's like we're saying with that Belinda moment being funny. If certain other things didn't happen, I would have liked this moment more. And I don't know what you guys thought, but this is going to make me sound like a chud, I think. I kind of like Conrad's ending being like a happy thing. I just think it's kind of an unintuitive direction for that to... I don't, because I think a lot of other characters, I think the way Conrad was treated in contrast to other characters doesn't sit right with me. But I think that's sort of an interesting ending to give to him. I don't know. What did you guys think of that?
I do kind of feel like Conrad as a character in both parts of this finale, actually, he is disproportionately well served compared to everyone else. It's kind of like he was the main, well, maybe not the main, but one of the main sources of interest, I guess, for the screenplay. Like just his fascination with Conrad, where it's not really fascinated with, say, I don't know, like Belinda. Yeah, so I see what you mean. It's like, compared to Lucky Day, where Pete McTighe is just sort of like, you will die in prison, I fucking hate you so much. It's interesting to, I guess the point of it really, is that moment which you can kind of see sometimes in RTD1, where the universe is unfair, where life is unfair, where kind of maybe the wrong person gets the happy ending. So that beat where Ruby's like, I can't believe Conrad got the last wish and not Poppy, that's so annoying. And it burns because she made that wish, right? I like those moments of like, you did something good, but you're kind of regretting it. It's just a nice moment of emotional thorniness and entanglement.
Yeah, I think it's really successful how Conrad is kept, even though he's living in a magic room with a magic baby who grants wishes and he's part of a bigger mega plot, he's kept as a guy. He's fundamentally the same kind of guy he was before. You know, he's got a warped and bigoted vision of the world, but he's, you know, making it real by talking about it. But he's also just like a dude who's got this platform basically by accident. And if one or two things had gone differently earlier in his life, he would be a totally fine person. And it's interesting that where Omega gets, you know, shot to death with a big gun and the Rani gets eaten, Conrad, as a sort of ground level normal guy, the episode goes, yeah, well, if his life was just very slightly different, he would be unremarkable and basically fine. And it's sort of the accident of him getting all this power that is the problem rather than him as a person, which I think is an interestingly nuanced conclusion for the character.
Yeah, it doesn't treat him as this axiomatic like font of evil the way that Lucky Day almost sort of does. Maybe not quite, but kind of getting there. So it's definitely a more compassionate approach, so we say.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think there's kind of a resonance in an interesting way between how he wishes everyone a family and then what happens with the doctor later, I guess, changing history to give Belinda Poppy. Like, at least that's how I read that conclusion.
Hmm.
You know, it's sort of a through line about family that I think kind of contributes to the bigger arc. I mean, that in terms of things we liked, I did like that in the end, now kind of shoehorned in at the end, this season is a story about a companion who is a mother in search of a daughter, in a way, whereas season 1 was about the opposite, right? Ruby's looking for her mom. So in that way, I thought there was a sort of unexpected cohesion that this episode gave to the Disney Who as a whole. And yeah, I like that. I guess Conrad was a little piece of that.
I feel like those connections to Ruby and that season 1 story and those themes of motherhood and foundlings and things, they feel like ghosts of what this 2-season arc may have been originally planned as. Obviously, we don't know the full scope, but it seems pretty obvious to me that a lot of the season was kind of a very short notice kind of scramble to reconfigure parts of a storyline into something else. So you can see bits that feel like, Belinda in general feels like a sort of short notice kind of creation. And the fact that so much of her story ends up weirdly feeling like it's in the shadow of Ruby's story, or like contains the ghosts of Ruby's story, it ends up, as much as obviously you couldn't, well, obviously things would have to be very different, if Belinda was not in the story, but it's nice that those ghosts are there, so you can see that there is kind of an overall vision, an idea. I would have been interested to see what it was like before everything got, turned into a scramble. But also on the whole, even in the last 15 minutes, which obviously reshot, written at very short notice to wrap up Shooty's era, I think, at least in terms of 15's overall story, I think RTD sort of acquitted himself well when it came to wrapping up 15's themes, like linking it back to Ruby disappearing in Church on Ruby Road, right? Stuff like that. So, it's not some completely intentionless thing.
Yeah, in terms of plot and where a couple of specific characters end up, and also just generally the last 15 minutes of this episode, I think it gets pretty incoherent. But in terms of the broader story of this era of the show overall, it's really like kaleidoscopic and thematic in a really cool way. I think it's interesting how much Space Babies like set that template that, oh yeah, this is all going to be about babies. Like, pretty much every episode is about babies and losing babies and growing up and all these different interconnected ideas that don't tend to feel like just one. Like, often when someone's trying to be really kaleidoscopic like that, they'll just put the same thing in lots of times over. But like Nate said, there's real shifts in that the first series is about parenthood from the point of view of a child, and this one's about childhood from the point of view of a parent, and you get each episode this slightly different perspective on the ongoing concerns of the series, and I think that's what Doctor Who's really good for, generally. In the same way that, each two-parter in Series 9 has a different kind of dualism, a different kind of, like, binary being explored.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back even before Space Babies, right? Church of Ruby Road is all about trying to save a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I do kind of wonder how much of it is RTD commenting on the timeless child. I mean, that was, he made that explicit a couple times, right? That, trying to really explore the idea of the Doctor being an orphan emotionally through the companions. And yeah, it's interesting to see that stayed to the very end.
I do think in years to come, we're going to view the Gatwa era as like one with the Whittaker era. Like this is one project.
Oh no.
because there's a lot of the same problems as well. Like, this is better, to be clear. I think this is better than the Whittaker era. But there's a lot of the same production problems and a lot of the same lore-y problems and characters getting weird, depressing endings that don't seem like they were on purpose. And also, the whole thing has the same set of themes about, childhood and adoption and all that stuff.
And memory wiping now. So
yeah, and 13's in this. So
yeah, a lot of people really liked that scene. I liked that. I felt like Murray was kind of trying to evoke Sagan in the music there. I see a lot of people like saying 13 felt so different and amazing in this scene. Why wasn't she written like this all the time? She felt, for better or worse, she felt the exact same to me. I don't know what, I kind of like the scene, but she didn't really feel that distinct to me from how Chibnall wrote her. What did you guys think?
There was a moment during that scene where I did actually wonder if they were going to write her trying to stop him from saving the day. Like, no, you can't change the timeline. But they didn't do that. They kind of flip it around and go, oh, it's never going to work. I love you. Let's hug it out. Let's be really friendly and fun. I don't think she felt very different in terms of writing or performance, but maybe it's just the choice to give her a scene with 15 where they feel like friends and, you know, and they're intimate and they express like affection for each other and they kind of talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just that, like in 13's own era, so much of it was just sort of sitting forlornly around the TARDIS, or like, oh, like I'm not looking at each other, not really like dealing with their feelings at all. Maybe that's all it is.
Also, we've been around half an hour positive. We can stay like this if you want, but I think it's fine for us to talk about whatever at this point.
I want to say one more thing about that 13 stuff. I think, on the whole, it's like, as much as I kind of disagree on principle with the idea of just doing time crash immediately before the Doctor regenerates.
It is that.
So, for the sake of it, as much as I do think it kind of undermines the idea of this episode being about the Doctor who is regenerating and just turns it into a fan thing, dealing with meta concerns, there is a sort of an appealing honesty in bringing 13 and 15 together like that and having them hug it out. It kind of feels like 15's era doing what in a way it was always trying to do, which is repair whatever was happening with 13's era and Chipu and the show overall. You know, even with that little line where he's like, you know, no, actually it's like 13 who says, I should say that to Yaz. You know, bringing up Yaz again, kind of trying to give this extra bit of closure to Phasmin, of all things. The fact that we've got, like, the last episode of Gatwa era, we're trying to do this last minute sort of reputation, like, healing for, like, a story arc that finished, like, years ago. These kind of lingering things from Chipu that we still aren't entirely satisfied or happy with. I do feel like, I mean, when you just look at how people wanted, like, 13 to regenerate straight into 15, how people were really upset that Tennant was shoved in there instead. Just like, there's always been, I think, this weird link, this intangible link between 13 and 15. Like, why aren't they, like, 13 has been, like, looming over 15 in a way. So as much as I don't necessarily think it's a great choice for the story or for the characters, I kind of appreciate just laying it all out there at the end and having her actually show up. Because at the end of the day, it's like the truth coming out. Like, this was actually about 13 all along, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's very honest. I've seen the last half of this episode framed as like an apology tour, as opposed to David Tennant's victory tour. It's just going around all the things that didn't quite work and going, that was a shame, wasn't it? And including 13 in that feels very honest, because, you know, this era has been trying to patch up 13's era a bit and trying to continue its ideas, and ultimately it didn't really work, but it gave it a good shot. And I do think no one but Moffat has actually figured out how to write any kind of multi-Doctor thing, because even Time Crash has like an actual character conflict in that the 10th Doctor thinks the 5th Doctor's the coolest and the 5th Doctor thinks the 10th Doctor's cringe. And they sort of work that out over 2.5 minutes or whatever. Whereas here, you know, there's a feint towards 13 having some kind of conflict with 15, but ultimately it's all sort of hugs and smiles. I think it ends. I liked seeing her, and I'm glad that she's sort of been incorporated into the fabric of the show in a more thorough way than she was by her own era. But it does feel inert to me as a scene. I'm not sure why it's actually there.
I think the only beat where it kind of tries to do that thing of what's the contrast between their characters is when 15 says I love you and 13 says, oh, I never say things like that. Oh, fuck. and 15's like, that's why you got me. Obviously, this does not actually apply to how 15's run has played out, but it does feel like a callback to what 15 was, I guess, maybe supposed to be when he was introduced. Like, oh, I'm fine now. I can express my feelings to people. And obviously, yeah, that has not been the case if you look at how he left Ruby in season 1. But this is kind of trying to pretend that was the case all along. So I appreciated just trying to bring that back a little bit, even if it's far too late.
It's a bit odd because 14 was introduced as the Doctor who can say I love you now, right? In the Star Beast, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
14's the Doctor who can do that sort of as a result of his experiences over the last few incarnations. And now that's sort of been retrofitted, so it was 15 who made that personal development since being 13. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, and in a way, I guess it's scaling down the ambition. I suppose the actual premise of 15 was like, oh yeah, I've let go of all the Time War angst and the Last of the Time Lords angst and the fucking Pandorica angst and Gods of Ragnarok angst and all those things. Yeah, that's so clearly off the table because we've been doing all this Last of the Time Lords bullshit all over again. But now it's just, well, I can say I love you, and even that hasn't actually been true. So it's like literally like the minimum ambition.
Yeah, I mean, the Doctor never went back to Susan in the end. I think as a writer, probably RTD had a bunch of scenes just kicking around that he's thought of since the very beginning, and then all of a sudden he had to write a Regeneration episode, and he just threw a bunch of them in there. And that's what this 13th scene was.
Release the Susan cut. Please, like, I'm begging you. Like, we know that it's insane to me. They'd had a Susan return scene like in this episode. We know they made it. We know they were building up to that, and they had to get rid of it. Like I swear, RTD and just like everyone up there must be kicking themselves over and over again for how this has played out. Like, my God, how unfortunate for them.
Yeah, Susan's tragic. The Interstellar Song Contest ends up being the episode of Doctor Who that has the most Susan content. It's just wild. Especially because that's obviously a tease for the finale, which then has no Susan in it. Like, this episode had literally no Susan.
Really baffling and disappointing. It seems like this is was this really meant to be a 3-arc thing? Was all the Susan build-up last season, and then the explicit shots of her, they had her in costume filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was clearly meant to be in this episode, but when they had to do the reshot ending at the last minute, like, there wasn't, like, they couldn't work it out to incorporate her somehow. And even the shoot they did had to be like in top secret, right? When they had to walk around the TARDIS for a few minutes. That was all they could do in that context. And it's just like, it just wasn't going to work, basically, when they had to do the new ending. So unfortunately, we just got no Susan. Maybe if they ever get to make the show again, you can try and factor her into the next season.
Well, you know what? I kind of hope they don't. I'm kind of, it really pains me to say that, right? It sounds like heresy, but there would have been a real cohesion to like a 3-season arc that's all this family focus, and then it ends with the return to Susan. I really hope that if we get another season of Doctor Who, it isn't just, the 3rd arc of what RTD had hoped to write for 15.
That is a good point.
But, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever even get an answer to that question.
Yeah, I would probably prefer to start a new story at this point. Like, just wrap this one up, tie a bow on it. Kind of, it's finished. It kind of staggered to a conclusion. Let's just try and rethink. Given that, like, the tail end of this era has been like stumbling over itself to deal with the problems that it created itself, I just feel like it might be better overall to just like, let's blank slate it a little bit again.
I'm interested in something and why you guys think Russell did it this way. The last 20 minutes of this really do feel like a kind of epilogue added on, I think. And so the regeneration happens because of all the Poppy stuff, and he has to give regeneration energy or whatever to make all that work. Why do you think Russell went in that direction rather than kind of, when he was doing the pickup shoots, kind of embedding some... I feel like the episode could have felt tidier if he'd kind of retroactively knitted together some of the Ncuti leaving stuff into it earlier. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just interested about his priorities. Like, in Series 10, the 12th Doctor starts his regeneration pretty early, and that just kind of mounts up over the episodes. The Omega confrontation, or like anything earlier, I'm sure a little bit of reshooting could have like killed 15 there and then had that build up over the rest to kind of build up the tension or whatever. Why do you think we kind of have such a divorced kind of ending of the episode where that's all kind of tagged on rather than knitting it earlier? Am I kind of overthinking it? I just, when I was rewatching it today, that kind of struck me how it really feels like a whole, kind of like how Empire of Death feels like it has that extra episode at the end. And I love that extra episode in Empire of Death. That's the only thing I really like about Empire of Death is all the Ruby stuff at the end. And I feel like the extra episode in this episode, I don't really like. But I'm just curious why the 15 regeneration stuff, I'm sure Russell could have quite easily integrated it in earlier. Do you think that would have been better or worse? Or why do you think he didn't do that?
I think the new formula that RTD's developed, that you can see really clearly repeated across these two series, has that sort of classic style episode 4, second half of the finale thing, where the actual stakes, the big monster or whatever, gets wrapped up actually quite quickly, and then we can just do character stuff for the last sort of 15-20 minutes. And I think that's a pretty good idea. I think that's, ideally you would integrate the character stuff into the big action, whatever. But I don't mind it as a way of doing the thing. But where the original sort of epilogue bit of this episode has had to be taken out and replaced with, this arch regeneration stuff, I sort of just think it's a lack of imagination for what a regeneration can be. I think they go, it needs to be a big explosion, and he needs to say goodbye to everyone, and we need to tie off all these loose ends, and it needs to be really explicit, and he needs to get some last words where you can put them on a mug. I think there's a much more interesting version of this that does incorporate it into the episode, like you said, where I think, if you ended in that scene at the nightclub that seems to have been the original ending of the episode, you just have the Doctor, a bit of a glowing hand, and he sort of shakes it off and go, I'll deal with it later. And then we assume off screen he dies and regenerates because he's slowly running out of energy, right? You could do all this more original, less than the most obvious straight line version of a regeneration where someone gets sapped of power and then they explode in the TARDIS. There's all sorts of ways to do a more interesting version of the end of a Doctor's era, and I think it's just lack of imagination that they don't go in that direction.
I think lack of time may have been a factor here as well. I mean, they're literally like having to put this together very sort of close to the wire.
Yes, that too.
I think that kind of, but even I think that general just doing things in a very rushed manner and getting the least interesting version of it as a result. I think you can kind of see that in more than one place, like throughout RTD2. So it's kind of unsurprising that it happens again. I will say, although I do not actually like the literal story that happened, or the effect, or the result, I think the concept of the Doctor regenerates because he's sacrificing himself to save some kid or whatever, I think I prefer that to the Doctor got stabbed by Omega's massive claw like 20 minutes into the episode and dies later because of that. I think if you're just trying to think of like what is the most direct and superficially functional way to regenerate this Doctor in a reshoot, I think I think having to go back and try and add an action shot or an effect shot into the Omega scene, I think it's just like a less intuitive path, I think, to try and do that. I
do think it gets... I can see the rationale for making the Doctor's regeneration a conscious sacrifice. But I think that's what like most of them are.
Yeah, especially now.
At which point it gets a bit repetitive. Like they're all very conscious things. I think it ends up really confusing what the emotional story is because everything's coming to a conclusion and then suddenly there's a new dramatic question right at the end. Would the Doctor explode himself to save a kid? And that's not really connected to the earlier stuff, so it gets a bit bleh.
Nate, we're talking about the Omega stuff. What did you think when Omega came out of the door and he looked like that?
I was horrified. Omega has such a good design in the classic series, and I hate to think that the new series... I understand that he couldn't just appear the same way that he had. I knew there was going to be some change, but when that big hand came around the door, I was just like, oh no. Why does it have to be this? So whatever, it's fine. I've made my peace with it, but yeah, there's even some, I guess if you really scratch your head about it, like, okay, he's in this realm that is somehow both hell and the upside down and also Narnia, and then he has an ambition to become the god of time. We say, okay, so like Cronus, like Greek mythology, we see him then eat one of his children, I guess, if the Rani counts as that. There's some weird lines there about whether bigeneration is like having a child. So I don't know. I've made my peace with it, but the whole thing was so pointless. I actually think it would have been better if, as was mentioned, the emotional arc of the episode, climax was not Omega or Omega returning. It was all of the character stuff that had to happen later. I almost would have been happier if RTD had explicitly subverted that by just having the Doctor stop the Rani before the summon happened, which is what I thought was going to happen. There's that odd bit where the Doctor says, or Rani is like, "Come on, haven't you ever wanted to start over? Like, don't you want to meet him?" And the Doctor's just kind of like, "Yeah." And I really thought that was set up for the Doctor having some fabulous plan to stop her, and instead, I don't know what to say. Right? He did really just stand there as she opened the door and let him into reality. So, yeah, all of that was baffling, and I don't know if that's a victim of cuts or what did you think?
I think it's trying to be clever. I think that it wants to be something kind of clever here by intentionally having a monster that is a bit of a disappointment and looks a bit shit. Because I think the idea of it, I see what the point was. Like, yes, like to the Time Lords and in all these legends, Omega was, the monster under the bed, the underlying horrific beast. Like people have misremembered who he actually was, right? So people, because he's been gone so long in the antimatter or whatever, like people just have this scary image of him as this creature who's going to like eat everyone. So yeah, surprise, surprise. Durrani opens the door and she gets this kind of reductive caricature of him instead of the actual Omega. Haha, how clever, brilliant, RTD, that's such a great point you've made. But the thing is, like, what that amounts to is you've just put like a boring kind of crap monster in your episode on purpose. And I think to get away with that, you need like a lot more going on, like, everywhere else. I just feel like if you're gonna have your twist, your funny twist, be that you're not actually getting a cool, character-filled, interesting villain, you need cool, character-filled, interesting characters like everywhere else in your story. That's kind of I guess it's kind of what's missing, really. I think that's kind of why the cleverness of that, putatively, does not really land with me in a way that it might have otherwise.
Yeah, you've got obviously comrades trying to bring back a sort of mythologized version of the past, like the founding of British civilization, whatever. He's trying to bring back sort of the 50s, and the Rani's trying to bring back like the Time Lord 50s, or like the when the Time Lords were great. It's the same idea of harkening back to the past and trying to make it real now. Everyone's trying to make the present the past again, and then obviously, like Comrade brings back the past and it mostly sucks. The Rani brings back the past and it's literally monstrous and stupid. Like you can see the themes going on there, but dramatically it's another big boring CGI monster that can't move. Weirdly, both Omega and Sutek can't move around. They're like stuck in one place, which is a really strange thing that they've got in common, which I assume is like a practical limitation rather than a creative decision, but both of them are stuck like from the waist down. Yeah, so it ends up being this boring CGI thing you have to shoot with a laser.
Yeah, and from an action perspective, it ends up being kind of wishy-washy. Like it can swipe the Rani and eat her before she has a chance to react, but it just kind of sits there and waits for the Doctor to blast it with a big gun. It lets Mrs. Flood escape. So it's not really consistently realised as even a threat, right? It's not like this. It's not even. I think that kind of diffuses how scary or impressive it can even be when it's just gonna, it makes the Rani's fate kind of extra shitty. Like she didn't have any kind of contingency. She just stands there, lets it kill her, obviously, but the Doctor can stand there and kind of slowly back away and he's fine. I just feel like stuff like this, if it's not actually consistently like properly realized in terms of can this thing actually reach out and kill you, is it actually dangerous, then it kind of stops it from working or being really effective in the way that it should be.
It's also one of the points where I think the childhood kaleidoscope of themes gets more obvious than interesting, where they're bringing back the daddy of all the Time Lords and he looks like a big baby, and I think that's just sort of like mucking around with the images more than it's like building a larger idea. At that point, it just looks to me like throwing together the themes that are already on the table for the design.
I dare say it might be kind of something that's true of this era overall. I feel like there's this literalism with things, with some of these ideas. Like, I think even part of the change implicit in doing this whole Pantheon reality, like free-form reality, all magic is real, everything is real now, is that now if you want to do a story about wishes and dreams and magic, you just say it's wishes and dreams and magic. Like, there's no layer of like coding anymore. There's no sort of metaphor or translation of one thing into another language. It's just doing the literal version of this theme. So we've got a literal story about literal babies and literal. It feels like it's kind of it feels overly simplified in some ways and kind of less interesting for it.
Ranis' ending was weird. So one dies and the other makes a British pop culture joke and disappears.
Pretty funny pop culture joke, though.
The fact that Mrs. Flood is the one that survived feels like a kind of admission that Mrs. Flood was the one we were actually interested in all along. like Anita Dobson was kind of like she was the one who was teased for so long. It's annoying that instead of her actually getting any sort of big scene or getting to really do anything in this episode, Mrs. Flood is just kicked down the road to maybe come back later after having done like precisely nothing. It's like, really? Like, what the hell was the point of any of this? Like, we introduced a new Rani just so we can kill her and keep the one that was already there. It really is like, the snake eating its own tail. Just there's an absence of like the stuff we actually want.
Yeah, obviously the point is that in the next season we'll see Mrs. Flood regenerate again into a different Rani, finally debunking the whole flowchart thing from the beginning.
Oh,
so
I see.
If this is the ultimate intention, I'm fine with it. Otherwise, it's just sad.
I also enjoy as a tiny side note, of the many bits of the era that this episode feels like it's sort of giving up on. There's an explicit line at the end where Gatwa's like, well, no more bigeneration, I guess. I guess that's done. That was a vision for the show, but I guess not this time. Not bigeneration anymore. And I bet we'll never see a bigeneration again, ever.
Yeah, it does feel like when you drop it as casually and sort of uninterestingly and sort of non-committally as they did at the end of Interstellar Song Contest, it's like, well, that idea has now been... all its juice has been used up. You've done the joke version of it now. It's officially dead. Stick a fork in it.
Everything with the Rani and Omega here feels so arbitrary to me and like such a waste of time, really. Everything from like the last third of Wish World through to halfway through this one, it's just eating up time and it's not interesting. I felt just the Ranis just bring Gallifrey back again. We're just gonna bring Gallifrey back again, and we're gonna blow some stuff up, and we're gonna bring back a great evil, and that was all so dry to me.
There's one Rani beat I liked. I think maybe in the whole story, there's one. Just a little moment, and I don't like it that much, but I liked when she kind of makes it clear that she's a scientific racist, and everyone groans. And she's like, oh, I think I've lost the crowd. I liked that. I didn't like the rest of that scene. I think particularly when everyone in unit is just standing around watching the Doctor and Rani riff at each other and occasionally chiming in. I think it starts bad, but it sort of gradually gets worse. I think particularly when Kate is something like, my father fought Omega. It's like, oh my God. It's like, it just feels so really awkward and clunky in how that is done. Like, it just feels like we've got to get through. It feels like a chore. We've got to like ritualistically get through all of the bloody continuity references, and each person has to chime in with a relevant classic Who lore expertise. It's like the story is not advancing. It's like, oh my God, it's really, really painful. And that's kind of the moment in this episode where like the story just really starts to just drag and drag and drag.
Are you telling me you weren't charmed and enthralled by Bonnie Langford saying, yeah, I met the Rani before. She's a bad un.
Oh, yeah, and oh God, I hated that. It's like,
She's so mean.
when they have that bit slightly later, when the Rani finally shows up and she starts sort of dissing Mel, and Mel's like, I never thought about you once. And I was like, oh, you thought about me every night. Like, I kind of see what they're going for there. Like, I sort of mildly, the idea of taking these kind of naff classic stories and making them out to be like really epic, dramatic conflicts. I think if it was just sort of character stuff, little moments like that, I could sort of tolerate them. But when it's just like a character going like, oh, we meet again, or, oh, I met the Rani, I fought the Rani, and it's just this weird self-indulgence I can't stand. I really, really don't like that.
You can tell that RTD is uninterested in it. So then why does he do it? I don't understand. It's every season now has ended with the big epic return of a villain from Classic, and he's just going down the list and he's lost interest. And I don't know why he sticks to the formula. If there's one takeaway that I hope he takes from the Moffat era, or that I hope he would have taken away, is that you don't have to do that. And if we do get a season 3 eventually, I really hope we just actually go in a new direction this time.
I mean, you have that moment during the Doctor and Rani's dialogue where it's written in such a way that they really linger for a moment on the declaration that Time Lords are sterile. They are a genetic, whatever the hell, a genetic dead end. And it just feels like, and of course you only know this if you're people like us, it just feels like RTD wrote that knowing he was trolling Loom people.
Yeah.
Like with the just this lingering on the we're sterile before we actually find out why it is. It just feels like they were trying to, oh my god, is RTD going to do Looms? You can picture RTD kind of laughing in his head about what like the Loom fans and like the VNA, like Virgin Adventures readers and Classic Who people who would think watching that scene and then having the expectations subverted where it turns out it's not Looms. And it's like, why is this shit in your head? Like, if this shit is in your head, you should be sacked. You cannot run the show if you know what a Loom is.
Tragic.
Yeah, I don't want this anywhere near the show ever again. It's like if you're spending any time, if you're thinking even a millisecond about trolling like Loom enjoyers like in your actual episodes, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? This can't happen.
Except when Moffat did it. When Moffat did it, it was good.
Yeah, it did work on me. I did actually pause the TV and shout at it before they revealed that it wasn't Looms. So, yeah. I agree he should be sacked for a different reason. Yeah.
Have I passed it properly that the Time Lords are sterile because the death particle from the Timeless Children, which killed all the Time Lords, while killing them, also made them sterile?
He's mixed up. Remember how he didn't rewatch The Celestial Toymaker and Phil Collinson did when they were doing the 60th?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's very understandably mixed up Series 12. Spyfall 2, the Master kills all the Time Lords.
We don't find out how, by the way.
Yeah. In Timeless Children, he has a death particle, and that gets the Cybermasters, who I guess are the remnants of the Time Lords. But they're two different Gallifrey calamities. And I think the sterility thing is like an addition to either of them. But I think it's like how we kind of treated the Flux. Like, I don't have any issue with this, actually. I think it's the way Russell tries to kind of make sense of Chibnall era things is to, but I'm not sure how intentional some of the conflations and shifts are, but yeah, the sterility bomb that kind of happened in both episodes, or neither, I guess.
And in practice, it only affects the Doctor, the Rani, the Master, because they're the only ones who like survived it at all. So it's like there's this weird kind of massive lore thing that only affects like these two characters.
I know some kids watching the current era who are sort of dipping back into the Moffat and RTD1 eras as they go. And they've just assumed that the genetic explosion stuff that Gat was always talking about is the Time War.
Yeah.
Which I guess is RTD's intention. But they've just rolled them together in their head because I guess why wouldn't you?
I mean, I guess at this point, just purely by doing the genocide of Gallifrey again in Spyfall, I think Chibnall kind of committed all of this stuff to just being a soup forever now. Like, it's never getting redeemed or fixed or made sense of. So RTD's just rolling with it and just treating it as a complete, like, incoherent like, mishmash. Like, we're never actually gonna. Like, it's just. I don't think the mythos of the show can actually sustain having like repeated, like identical versions of this event. So now they're just going to all collapse into one. like converge, and that's the only thing you can do, really.
There was another weird. We're talking about Series 12 conflations. It's kind of hard to keep straight how many universe shifts or resets are in this episode itself, because there are a lot. And then towards the ending, they start like multiplying exponentially. How many universes do we have in this episode? How many versions of reality happened?
So we start in the Wish world, and then when we get rid of Conrad's wish, we have a slightly altered normal world. So in this world, Ernest Borgnine's still alive, border with Norway is moved. And then the Doctor goes into the vortex and punches it with glowing green juice, and that rewrites time again, pretty much right after the previous one. And now in this new universe, the entire storyline of this season is different, and Belinda's life is completely different. And now there's like this guy called Richie has had a child with Belinda. So you've got basically another new universe right at the end. And I think that the proximity of that has kind of led people to be and particularly the way they frame it. Because they do this montage of clips from earlier in the season that are now different, because now Belinda's talking about Poppy all the time. And I think that's thrown off some viewers, because I think that's kind of given some people the impression that it's meant to be like so this is what was happening all along and we just didn't see it. Like, we just cut away every time Belinda was about to mention Poppy, and but that's not it, obviously, because in the actual original timeline, like Belinda's life didn't live there. Like, it was genuinely different. It doesn't match up. But just the framing of it, like it's a reveal about what we were watching, I think is misleading and made this episode confusing for some people in a way that it maybe isn't trying to be.
I think it's kind and redemptive that RTD has shifted the timeline at the last moment to put us in a better version of the season that we got. I really like the idea that Belinda so lacks an arc that sort of the fact that she lacks an arc was like a plot hole that needed to be resolved in the finale. It's interesting.
Yes, it's because Belinda's character is so rewritable that RTD manages to just completely rewrite it at the last minute, and that's the happy ending. Like, she actually gets a character, whereas before she was like, she had like nothing much of anything in her life. It's like original Belinda was expendable, so it's fine to just rewrite her with Mother Belinda, and like no one will care. Like that's deeply unflattering to the whole storyline of this season and just everything that was happening here. But that's kind of how it turns out.
It's absolutely wild that Belinda's story ends with her having a new life, like, imposed on her, when the whole start of her story, the place we first meet her and the first, like, big conflict we explore with her, is her struggling against men imposing their version of her life onto her. And it's all about her struggling against that. No, just the finale is also struggling against a different man imposing a version of her life onto her, and she escapes that, but then ends up getting a different version of her life imposed onto her, and that's the good ending.
The line in this episode that chimed so fucking weirdly for me in the light of Robot Revolution is that when the Doctor, even before the actual process of rewriting Belinda's life happens at the end, way early in the episode, when we're getting introduced to this whole dilemma with Poppy, and the Doctor's kind of showing off Poppy to everyone, I think he says something to Belinda like, maybe I was meant to meet you so our baby could be born. Like, it's this whole predestination sort of fate thing. Like, the telos of Belinda's life was to have this fucking baby with the Doctor. And what is that if not like the quintessence of everything that whole tradwife thing that Al was kind of imposing on Belinda at the start of the season? This idea that it's like nuclear family, you must reproduce, you must you must produce like my child for me. Like that is like at the center of that entire sort of patriarchal, very deeply misogynistic sort of mindset. So to put that just because we all love children so much and we'll be fine with it, apparently, putting that in the Doctor's mouth at the end, it just jars. It's so weird and inappropriate.
I mean, in the Robot Revolution, the Doctor saying that, Belinda, it's your destiny to travel with me, is explicitly like framed up as an extension of the same behaviour that Al's using to control her life. So we've already got the dynamics set up where the Doctor's, destiny, Belinda, is itself a manipulative behaviour, And then we round out going, oh, actually, it was your destiny all along. Have a baby.
Yeah, like the role of Belinda in this story, is, for want of any other like meaningful role as a character or in the kind of the story of the show, is mother of the Doctor's child. And I guess the note of implicit tragedy at the end is that the child is no longer the Doctor's, and we've forgotten that she was the Doctor's child. Oh, isn't it sad for the Doctor that his child isn't his anymore, and it's some other man's? It's Richie's child. I will always love you, even if it's not actually my child anymore. And that's kind of how that's the heartbreaking, tear-jerking beat at the end of the story. It just does Belinda absolutely no favors. It's like a parody of everything people kind of dragged Moffat for in series 6. Like when Widow Wardrobe aired, and then Asylum of the Daleks aired, there was this really repeated statement why is Moffat making every female character storyline revolve around pregnancy, their wombs, fertility, motherhood? This is reductive. You should let women have a wider range of stories and paths. And now RTD has just taken it to far further than Moffat ever would have dreamed of. This is I genuinely think Moffat would have been scared to write anything like this because he knew people would drag him over the coals if he did.
Oh, Series 6 plays the idea that you are pregnant and you don't know why or how as horror, right?
Yeah.
It's exaggerating the inherent fear of pregnancy by making it sci-fi and reality bending and scary in that way. And this story does the same thing, except it's good now. It's just a happy thing.
Yeah, they don't deal with the whole thing of Belinda having had this child imposed on her in a day, this child generated from nowhere. It's just completely hand-waved. Oh wow, how wonderful, a child, okay. It's just anything like that is kind of just, I think possibly the core of this, or a specific point in this episode that really kind of secretly, subtly encapsulates the issues with it. Right after the Doctor does his outfit change and kind of announces himself as gay to his nuclear family, his wife and child, kind of does this big reveal, in his new kind of queer-coded kind of outfit. And then immediately after, we go to the Time Hotel and Belinda gets her real memories and self back. It all streams into her and she's more normal Belinda again. I feel like in that sequence, right, not only do we actually skip over the beat of kind of Belinda and Poppy, these wish versions of them, kind of reacting to who the fuck this man is that's just walked into their living room and kind of grappling with that, which I think would have been quite interesting from that idea of a kind of a queer character, kind of the interrogating that. But then when it comes to what happens immediately after, we don't get a reckoning for Belinda with what has actually happened there, this whole family with the Doctor child thing. It really is just brushed over in a far worse way than Rory and Amy losing custody of their baby in Series 6, right? The lack of grappling with that in Series 6 was kind of one of the key emotional weaknesses maybe with the arc of that season, and it's so much worse here. This is such a huge thing that's happened to Belinda and there's just no reckoning with it at all.
In the end, Belinda does choose this, right? I mean, it's strange that they've written her this way, but from the very beginning, and I know there's that, I actually timed it. There's that odd, it's a 13-second shot with no dialogue of her face when she's kind of realizing the implications of Poppy existing. And I timed it because I feel like there was meant to be dialogue from the Doctor during that, and she was reacting to it, but it's just silent. And in that moment, she really commits to keeping Poppy around. And it's a disservice to her character that she's written like that. But I mean, the big difference between all these other instances of destiny being, imposed on her by some men is that, this one she does kind of choose and ask for, even at the end, right? So I guess it didn't bother me as much as some of those other instances, but still a weird thing to do with her character, especially when it meant that her obsession with Poppy led her to stay in the Zero Room and say, oh, there's no purpose for me in this adventure, even though I think in the very next scene, someone in the unit headquarters is shouting for a medic. It's It is really odd.
Also, it's not like Unit can't use children.
Yeah, good point.
They're very good at using children. They could put Poppy to work. No, yeah, I see the sort of the vision in, Conrad's heteronorm world gives Belinda a baby, but ultimately she decides to keep it, and she ends up a single mother. And I think that's an important part of it, that she's like she's taking this thing out of the heteronormative world and choosing it on her own terms. And I think that's sort of what the Doctor's story is getting at as well. But it gets really muddied by the fact that what Belinda actually wants is also part of what's being rewritten. Like, it's not so clear as her choosing a version of reality, because the reality changing around her is changing her wants as much as it's changing her circumstances. So what she actually wants at any given point in time is also a product of the control of the men in the world around her.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of like the version of her that wanted that. It's not even like it. It's true. The version of her that wanted this no longer exists. And there's just this new...
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, she clearly wants the Doctor to go and save Poppy at the end, because she realises that means she was mine. Like, she's clearly not against that, but it's not made clear to her at any point that saving Poppy is going to involve, like, rewriting her entire life into effectively a different person. And and even like Poppy, the child herself. I mean, it's a different version of Poppy. It's not the Doctor and Belinda's Poppy anymore. It's now Belinda and Richie's Poppy, like a different life, like a different history, born before the events of the robot revolution. So it's a child who looks like Poppy. I guess the idea, it's the same essence of Poppy. It's spiritually the same as Poppy, but it's still effectively a new child. Like, that's a different life, like a different existence. It just looks identical. I just so many things about it are just weird, and you're just kind of meant to like not really like think about them, just dismiss them. Kids are cute. We love kids. Yeah, that's it, really.
Like, I quite like the high concept that in this story, having a kid is the equivalent of the entire world changing around you. Like, it doesn't just change your life going forwards, it changes your whole life going backwards and in every dimension. And, Belinda choosing to have a kid literally redefines her whole existence. Which is one of those neat sci-fi emotional extrapolations that works for me on paper. But you need to be really careful actually implementing those ideas in a story, because anything that undermines how character action and interaction and reaction works gets messy and sort of adramatic very quickly. And you need to be a real, like, skilled time travel plotter or whatever to get that kind of thing really hammered out. And RTD, for his many skills, isn't a super time travel plotter, I don't think.
I guess for me, it feels like a shame to lose the Belinda who chose to keep Poppy in favour of Belinda who just had Poppy normally. If you see what I mean? Because, like, if Belinda has kind of had this Poppy come out of the wish and has decided, I'm gonna keep this child, even though this is like a strange thing, I'm gonna construct this family in this unusual shape. To just kind of like unwrite that from history and get a Belinda who kind of it's not that Belinda being a single mother is like a bad story or an interesting story, but it's just like we had one before and you just got rid of that. So yeah, in favour it's one that you've just invented for the purposes of the last 10 minutes of this episode.
Also, I know it's because he needs to go into the TARDIS and die and go off to do a perfume commercial, but the way the Doctor decides he can't be in Poppy's life because she's not, like, biologically his daughter anymore is sort of odd. Like, the thing that clinches it for him is that he scans her and she's 100% human. Without
consent, by the way. Scanning.
Without consent, all the way back around to Robot Revolution. We did it! It's bookends. So in this story that's sort of all about adoption anyway, and we're doing this big continuation from the Timeless Child stuff, the Doctor turns up to this kid that he's intent on raising, finds out that actually she's not biologically related to him, and he goes, all right, well, bye then, enjoy, and leaves. Which is that's sad. The Doctor's an adoptee, and it's weird to me that he's concerned about whether or not he's biologically related to the kid.
I think I don't know if this is a product of like discordance introduced by the reshoot, kind of the new ending, but there's a very significant and very obvious contrast between how Belinda talks about Poppy before she vanishes. So when they're in the TARDIS, Belinda's like, my daughter will not have a boring life. We're going to take her in the TARDIS. We're going to take my child. I'm going to have this baby on the TARDIS. So we're going to be parents on the TARDIS. We're going to fly through the universe. We're going to have lots of fun on the TARDIS with this baby. But when we get new Belinda and Poppy at the end of this episode, Belinda's like, Belinda who has lived with Poppy, prior to the TARDIS. She's like, I'm not taking my child in the TARDIS. We're not doing that. It will be unsafe for her. I'm not going to risk my baby's safety by taking her on the TARDIS. That is a really big contrast. So, so I think that's kind of, it might be that obviously when we're writing the new ending, he had to write out Belinda in a more kind of obvious way. So that's just kind of a result of that. But it looks intentional, even if it isn't. So I think we have to confront that.
It's very weird that Anita is also pregnant. That's one of those things that feels like the whole thing ticks over into sort of screedishness.
Is that because the actor who plays Anita was pregnant? Like, I don't actually know.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean. Like, even if it's not like, even if they couldn't do anything about it, it's like one of those things that, yeah, it's a bit like on the nose now.
I can see how if the actor's pregnant and the story's very much about children and pregnancy, you would want to fold it in. But it ends up being like one too many notes on the side of this odd motherhood is the be-all and end-all kind of theming.
I will be honest, as much as I said earlier I liked that Anita was in the episode, I don't really like how RTD wrote her. I have problems with some of the things they did there. I think as much as I kind of like the charm of having Anita, this kind of ordinary character, be the one who gets the Clara Impossible Girl insertion into those who scenes. But I think what they do there, and what RTD does, is that when she sees the Doctor with Rogue, there's this lingering shot of how like heartbroken she is, and then she says, and then I ran straight to Ricardo right after that. Like she literally, and it's like, it was kind of obvious in Joy to the World that the Doctor was gay. Like it was kind of clear that he wasn't going to be a thing with her. And I liked in Joy to the World how Moffat didn't play her up that much as like her being super heartbroken Doctor simp who's going to be on the rebound. I liked that he just played them as friends, ultimately. Friends who, adults who can have more than one emotion at once, who can have like nuanced emotions, and how, this female character is not just defined by pining for the fucking Doctor for the 10 billionth bloody time. Right? I actually liked that. That was refreshing. So I don't like how RTD has kind of folded her back into a joke about straight women kind of pining for gay men. I didn't like that. It was just too much. Okay, I get having her see Rogue, but like I think they just hit it a bit too hard.
I did read in watching Joy to the World, I did read it as her being into the Doctor, but it's played in an understated way, and like you say, there's more to their friendship than that. We've all been in friendships where someone's been crushing on you, and then it turns out okay, and you both get over it, and that felt like what their story was, where it was going, and then instead she gets defined by that, and then her child is a product of that heartbreak.
Yeah.
Like that's odd framing, that she had a child to get over the Doctor.
Yeah. It's like it's taking away like her ability to have her own life and like find someone because she likes that person, rather than everything just being a product of the bloody Doctor, being the most important man and the most lovable man. It's like, enough. I want characters to have their own bloody lives.
I hadn't thought about this, but reframing Anita's ascension to like doctoriness in Joy to the World, where she gets the keys to the TARDIS hotel, reframing that as actually she spent all that time looking for him. It's like if you brought back Clara and said she's been sailing around the universe trying to find the Doctor.
the Doctor. As much as I like kind of Anita getting insane, like overpowered abilities, I feel like in this episode, the fact that like the big way they reintroduce reality to Unit and save Unit is just her standing there opening doors. There's a few shots of her opening a door and standing at the side of a room opening a door, and the Doctor's like, Anita, I need you to hold that door open. it's like they try to play it as this big triumphant thing where like, yes, we've restored Unit, we're restoring reality, and she's just standing there with a door. It's not a powerful enough image for that to work. Like, you've got explosions going on, she's just standing there opening a door. It feels quite limp.
When a character could literally be replaced with a doorstop.
Yeah.
One feels something's gone wrong.
Again, it's the kind of writing yourself into a corner, because I think, if Anita could actually just be around the story opening doors anywhere, then the story would have to change a lot, I think, because it would make things too easy. So he's like, okay, I've got to bench Anita somehow. How do I do it? Hold the door open. Spectacularly rubbish.
This is very, like, meat and potatoes complaint, but the cliffhanger resolution is just sort of crap. I like that Anita's back in it, but her just turning up from another story to get the Doctor out of a deadly situation, lame. And the Wish World ending, that cliffhanger being resolved by, it's a big loop, but then the loop isn't relevant in the rest of the story. It's not like the mechanic of the Wish World looping ends up being important in any way. It just is a loop for the sake of getting out of the cliffhanger, and then it doesn't come up again. Just not very good.
Yeah, I think the loop renders the cliffhanger totally incoherent. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they expositing at the Doctor when he's just going to wake up in his bed and forget everything in a couple minutes? I do like the idea, I know I already made this joke to Gig, but the idea that that Conrad has rehearsed his speech to the Doctor like 100 times, that he's done this over and over through all the loops. I guess the door appearing is enough to break out of it. Like, why even have Anita as a character? I've seen people speculate that she was actually part of the reshoots, which I don't think makes sense. Like, I think we know that that's not true.
No, I don't think so.
But at the very least, if we knew that it was leading up to this bit with the Doctor regenerating in front of Joy as a star, that, it kind of brings it all full circle. I wonder, what would we be saying in the alternate version of the episode where there's no further tie-ins to Christmas and it's just Anita's there and then she's gone?
Would probably feel like the cheap tactic it actually is. Just one more thing about that cliffhanger and the loop shit. I love how much time we spent in Wishworld with Irani setting up the trap with those bombs on the balcony. Why does she blow it up if time is just going to reset in like 2 seconds? It's really, really staggeringly pointless. And why is the loop 24 hours? If you just need to have the Doctor break his illusions over and over, why not make the loop 1 hour? Why not make it 5 minutes? What's the point?
And why mess around with any of the rest of it? Why not just have, I don't know, put the Doctor in a box and poke him with a stick or whatever? They're just trying to generate doubt. Just ask him some hard questions.
You just hope it generates content, really.
Of course.
The whole May the 24th thing, I might be missing something. I feel like I'm missing something obvious, so I probably am. But, so obviously, Russell writes that in, and then that kind of forces Disney's hand a bit in that it'll be quite odd to not air the season in these weeks. And my assumption is the whole May the 24th thing just exists to kind of justify putting the Eurovision episode on the Eurovision day.
Yeah.
Is there any actual significance to May 24th beyond it being like the weeks after the Eurovision thing to kind of get the Eurovision episode airing at the time of year Eurovision happens? Or is just May 24th just arbitrary besides that?
I don't think there's any special significance to it other than that it's the finale airing date. I think RTD wanted some of that Series 5 source, because that was the whole 26th of June 2010 thing that Moffat did there to pretty decent effect, I think. Well, it was okay. I lived through it. It was all right when you did that. I think RTD want to kind of bring that back and get people really hyped for the May 24th date. But, no one cares. No one's watching the shit. So I think probably because we don't. There's no massive master narrative to kind of hook you into caring enough about these characters so much that you put May the 24th in your calendar as like some mega date that you super care about when the finale of Doctor Who is airing.
That's a really good point. There's so much stuff in this episode I don't like and I'm kind of a nag about. And you can very rightfully say, but you didn't mind when so-and-so did it. You didn't mind when another Russell finale did it or another episode did it. And that's totally true because it's not the issue of some of these crap beats or lazy beats. It's the issue is that in other finales, there's other stuff there to talk about. There's, I think most of the RTD1 finales have lots of issues, but the better ones have lots of good stuff happening as well. And so when you remember Doomsday, you're not remembering some of the crap plotting, you're remembering some of the actual emotional stakes and character moments. I think the issues with this and Empire to a lesser extent aren't really the stupid stuff so much as there's lots of stupid stuff and there isn't much good stuff to offset it. If there was as much great stuff in this finale as there is bad stuff, I wouldn't be complaining that much. I would just be enjoying the great stuff. It's the fact that there's kind of a lack makes me care more about the Omega stuff was kind of crap. I wouldn't care so much if there were lots of other cool things going on. Because there aren't, my brain just kind of ticks back. It's like I'm running my tongue over a sore in my mouth and I keep remembering that was really annoying and that was really lame how he wrote that. I wouldn't be thinking it if there were cool things happening as well.
The Series 5 finale date thing is also, I think, doing more here than it is here, where, it's sort of like a wedding invitation, like an RSVP kind of thing. It's telling you tune in on this date because it's the big exciting finale and it's a big appointment like a wedding, and the whole series is very much framed around pinging around time to get back to that. Here the actual date is not a significant thing for any of the characters. It's just the next day of Belinda's life, which isn't like a big sexy idea. It's just a day, really. It's just 2 weeks after Eurovision.
We learn first that Amy's going to get married. And then I think it's like at the end of Flesh and Stone, where we see the clock in Amy's room tick over to that date that we learned previously was the big Doom time explosion day. So we kind of learn that date is not only the time explosion, but also Amy's wedding day. So it kind of gains importance, and it has both a character importance and a big sci-fi lore, death, Doom importance, which kind of converge. So yeah, it's not just like a loose, random, arbitrary string of numbers.
Yeah, and it's also odd because so much of Wish World and Reality War builds towards May 24th, because it needs to be a big part of the episode so that you can't cut it out and air the series at a different time of year. But it's not there for a narrative reason. So you've got stuff like the big clock.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much just there to point towards May 24th. And who cares?
Like at the end of this episode, oh, finally, it's May 24th. Clap, everyone. We finally moved into the next day. Woohoo, celebrate. It's really weird because this airs on May 31st. So it's like, wow, that day a week ago was so important. I love being reminded of it. Like even the BBC announcer before this episode aired on BBC One, he was still like, it feels like May the 24th for some reason. Like on May 31st. Like that was just so weird. It just rings so like bizarrely and pointlessly. Like what the hell must people have thought of that? It's like it's this weird thing without a reason. And if it is actually for this arcane, I guess kind of like really finicky, fiddly reason that we're trying to force Disney to air the Eurovision episode on Eurovision, it's just such a weird intrusion of these annoying kind of meta concerns into the show. Like it's just mechanical like awkwardness.
And I'm not against, all in all, I'm sort of enjoying RTD fighting Disney in weird and arcane ways, using the material of the TV show itself to throw fireballs. I'm enjoying that. But you also want to incorporate it into the story, Yeah, maybe May 24th is Poppy's birthday, and that's what we reveal. And it's particularly important Belinda gets back.
That would have been nice. That would have been sweet if it's a birthday.
And then it's also cute because it's literally the day she was invented.
Yeah. So it technically is a birthday. They don't do anything with that.
So it's both her birthday and her birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed RTD kind of fighting Disney. Sadly, we may not get to enjoy that for much longer, depending on how the next few weeks go.
There's a moment, I didn't say this at the start because it's like an ironic like. Like I think it's a bad moment, but I like it because I like laugh every time I watch this bit. There's a few reasons why. It's towards the end. The actor for Ibrahim is one reason why, and Murray Gold is another reason why. When Kate says to 15, "Sometimes I think we're all your children," and then the music, like Lux style, blares incredibly loudly.
Sometimes I think we're all your children.
And then we look around, and only Millie Gibson is really doing an emotion with her face. And then Ibrahim's doing like the opposite of an emotion with his face as 15 looks around at everyone. It's just a incredible moment.
Yeah, absolute comedy. I agree. That was just so bloody funny. Just that musical cue just hitting you full in the face. The most, another classic awkward Gemma Redgrave line delivery on that line from a character who has like no emotional connection with the Doctor of 15 all, and a whole room of characters just feeling completely inert and just trying to play this like. I feel like RTD must have kind of known that he was taking the piss with that a little bit. Like it's so crude. And it just feels like such a parody. It's actually ridiculous.
It's, to be fair though, it's a nice change for Kate Stewart. That for once her character's being defined by her relationship to a father figure. That's nice. Glad to see that.
Yeah, you have a really strong script when all of the characters have to stand around before the finale and like remind the Doctor that what he's about to do is in character. Like, oh no, this is the same as what you did for me.
What do you think of there was another weird musical moment where, well, it's still unreleased, the series 10 finale, when the Doctor like blows up the floor of the colony ship, and then Bill like finds him kind of dead. I guess it doesn't really have a name because Murray's never released it, but when there's tears, there's hope is what people tend to call that music. And that was in this episode when they're in the TARDIS and they're dealing with the disappearing Poppy issue and all that. We were hearing that piece of music. What do we think of that? It's a great piece of music. Did you like how it was used there? Did you notice it was used there?
We can go and see my Uncle Roo. Oh, he's wonderful.
In the year 60,000, there is a planet called New Delhi.
Oh, we are going there.
We'll go in there.
Isn't it funny? I used to say, take me home.
Mm-hmm. And now you want to stay. I knew it. I knew I would get you in the end.
I think when it comes in during the Doctor and Belinda's conversation, and we don't quite know why it's come in yet, because we haven't noticed maybe that the coat is starting to disappear, I think that's really effective. I think just the first few piano notes of that, I think it comes in, something awful and sad is happening. We only know because the music is there and Ruby's staring at them for some reason. I think that's quite good. I think when you have characters who seem very happy and sad music is playing, I think it's always quite interesting because you've got suddenly the collision of tones, and it's between those two separate things, something ambiguous in the middle is coming out.
I tend to think Murray Gold's very effective when he's using contrast like that. I always think of the runaway bride scene at the wedding reception where everyone's having a dance and the Doctor's thinking about Rose.
Yeah.
And that's so much sadder to me because the music's playing in the opposite direction to the actual emotions of the scene. And so to have it here as a kind of looming foreshadowing over a joyful moment is really nice. And I suppose you can see like the thematic connection there, so long as Ruby remembers, so long as Ruby's sad about Poppy disappearing, there's hope for her. You can see that little link.
In a way, the connection to the Doctor Forge, you could even treat that as like regeneration foreshadowing, couldn't you? Because that's when 12 dies. So
I think my favorite bit of music actually was when there's the actual like pick up shoot goodbye to Belinda at the end before he goes off to regenerate, before the Joy to the World music starts. That's a really nice piece of music. That's really lovely. I hope it gets released one day.
I love you. And I love you, Pops. That will never change.
Yeah, that one was a standout to me.
The thing with the way the Ranis are kind of a bit crap. And Sutek was, I mean, he looked cool, but he was not that interesting. He was a bit crap last year. And then Omega was like mega crap this year. It's not the worst thing in the world if the show stops now, because I think there's an inevitability if Russell's going around picking up godly characters from the past of the show, that whether it was season 3 or season 4, we were going to get huge CGI Fenric, probably very Sutek reminiscent at some point. And I wish this era was good, but if it's over, if the whole Disney thing has crashed it, if it means we never get RTD's Fenric, I'm not that upset.
It's a trade-off I'll accept, yeah. Yeah.
It would have been, right? He would have needed to have brought back a big CGI classic villain.
Wolf, I guess. I think Gods of Ragnarok and Fenric, I think, were inevitable.
You know that Kronos one from like the demons or whichever story it was. Yeah, you can have that as well.
We have no idea what's going to happen with the future now. Whether even there's a whole weird thing with how Billie Piper is credited at the, or not credited at the end. My instinct is I think we're all overthinking this. And you know, maybe it's some weird politics between Disney. We can't technically advertise a doctor that we don't control or whatever. I think it's just comes down to, like Russell said, on the behind the scenes stuff for last year's finale, you just hope it will generate content. Like the whole looms trolling we were talking about. Russell, there's the fucking Petrol moment in Unleashed where Russell starts blathering on about, in one day there could be a companion called Petrol. I'm 1000% convinced he just comes up with that as he's talking to Stephen Powell, and he thinks Stephen's probably asked a stupid question about the Petrol thing. There's no way I think any of that was true. I think RTD is just a showman, and he likes trolling people, and he likes making people talk about things. I think the whole Billie Piper not being credited as the 16th Doctor or Doctor is just him knowing the fans like a fiddle, and knowing this will make fans talk more about Billie than if they just straightforwardly called her a Doctor or whatever. But all that said, if we do get Billie Piper's 16th Doctor episodes, and when we get them or whatever, I guess the question is, Russell says like season 3 is already written, like scripts for that are already done. And Russell and every Doctor Who writer ever really are good at adjusting scripts to different Doctors. Like there's plenty of episodes we've seen which were, you know, Eccleston written episodes that Tennant got, or Matt episodes that Capaldi got, and they all work pretty well. So I'm not really worried about it being adjusted for whatever characterization Billie might play. But I'm just curious about, like, if the Disney thing falls through or the show takes on some weird new form in 2 years, will all this Pantheon, like Oliver pointed out, the Chibnall era and the Ncuti era kind of feel linked together. I'm just curious whether the Billie era will feel like part of this or kind of a new thing, or I don't know how much the Pantheon stuff will stick around forever, or it's interesting to think about.
So any scripts that they have written for season 3 or season 4 or going on ahead, bin them, get rid of them. Okay, you know, when Moffat went from Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi, right, he started a discrete kind of new era, basically. I mean, yeah, there were some ideas that came back, but like the feel of that era is very like distinctly different, right? The Matt Smith era is kind of tied up with a bow with Time of the Doctor, right? If we get any, like, just let this thing be tied up. Let's have a new era now. I don't want these weird, like, awkward bloody hangovers and leftovers. Just please, God, change approach. Just do something different. I'm begging you. Like this one has already been consumed by its own floppage and failures. Like I don't want to just like be dragging on like the remnants of season 1 and 2 into whatever comes next. I just think that would be awful. Okay, I don't want like whatever Doctor we get next to be dealing with the same issues with characterization and theme and structure that have dogged this era from start to finish. Like, for God's sake, please just look and just rethink everything. Like, I don't want to just adjust the characterization of the Doctor in the script. I want to actually adjust the entire fucking ethos of the program so that it actually works this time. That's all I want.
And to get rid of the gods. All this stuff about Omega, it's overplayed. How many episodes do we have this season where it was one of the gods? Like, I thought, okay, you know, maybe this is something we'll get 2 times a season, but it was more than that. it's overplayed and it's kind of lazy, honestly. I'm tired of all the exposition. Oh, he's the original sin, he's the this, that, the other thing. No, we can just have normal stories, and it'll be more compelling without trying to just bank on this mythological epicness every time.
They give Omega a last minute big moniker just before he turns up. They're like, he's the one who's been there forever. He's the one of the underworld or whatever. Like they did with Sutek last year, peppered through the whole series. This time it's just crammed in right before he turns up. Like it's playing in this mythic register, but really like the quickest shortcut to the mythic register you can do. Not to mention that it still doesn't make any sense that you've got all these manifestations of gods who are straightforward manifestations of ideas or concepts or powers or whatever. And then you've got these classic villains who are retrofitted into being gods by the power of the mythology around them or whatever. And it's just whatever mode happens to be most convenient for the villain of this episode in question.
What kills me with it is if Russell I feel like the promise of some of the 60th stuff and this Pantheon stuff was that the show will be less cluttered now. Introducing the supernatural thing means we can do less explanations now and less exposition now, and we can just move on with things. And I loved all of that, and I felt like whether you love or hate it, at least ostensibly that's what the Giggle was trying to do, was to try and orient a new direction. I think that completely and utterly failed. I still stand by a little bit that I stand by a lot that it was a good idea. I just think Russell handled his own good idea really poorly afterwards. Anyway, I feel like in trying to unclutter the show, something about Russell's brain reversed that, and he filled it up with preoccupations, like Gig was mentioning earlier, not just preoccupations that are annoying, but preoccupations that are there shouldn't be moments in the episodes where Nate and I feel attacked for EU things. That's not, there's something deeply wrong with the priorities of the show when this is happening. I don't like that I can get really annoyed at how Omega was written in this episode, because the whole framing and everything of it just feels like a tweak at people who are invested significance in it. I hate the show's relationship with the past, basically. I feel like I thought the point of the 60th or RTD2 in general was new era, new vision. And I feel like the Church on Ruby Road did that quite well. I really liked that episode, and I thought it kind of set out a new vision for the show with the supernatural stuff not being too explained, and it had the musical, diegetic musical elements, and it felt all the adoption stuff. It felt like a new vision for the show. And then I feel like last year and this year, it's just kind of folded back worse than Chibnall years, worse than some of the more continuity-heavy Moffat years, and certainly worse than RTD1. We're in this wilderness era soup of obsession with past revival Who and classic Who, and the Looms thing. It's even the wilderness itself. Why is this so obsessed with the past? I'm yearning for 2018, where I think it's a crap series in a million ways, but having no returning continuity stuff at all in Series 11 was awesome, and I would give anything for Ncuti to have got that. Hey, I mean, he had no Dalek, Cybermen, or the Master or whatever, which I like. I think that's cool. But the show is so obsessed with all this stuff from the past, and I love Billie Piper, and if she gets to play the role for real and stuff, I'm very excited about that, because I think she's an absolutely incredible actor. But it's the episode literally ends on, the culmination of RTD's obsession with the past, at least visually. It just does my head in. I feel like the supernatural stuff was meant to be uncluttering and going into a new vision, but it's just folded back on trolling fans about classic Who lore, and I really, really, really hate that. I want the show to be loved, and I want the show to be good, and I want it to be new, and instead it's just complete and utter obsession with the past.
Bone beast, creatures from the underverse, because when two realities collide, it creates friction, and the friction creates these excitated atoms. That summons the bone beasts. They're like antibodies. They sort of graze, feeding off the atoms, cleaning up the world. I think that's a good example of like how this supernatural element has not actually led to less clutter in the show. We're just doing the same kind of jargon, weird technobabble explanations. Like, we're just basically relapsing into the exact same mode of writing the show, and the exact same sort of bullshit in the show, the exact same kind of backwards-looking, self-cannibalizing bullshit. It's just got this weird, like, kind of magical gloss on it now. Like, so it hasn't actually changed the essence of how the crap ways that the program is written. I just thought that quote was kind of a good example of like just the way that what we thought would be a more lyrical and kind of supernatural themed kind of mystic vibe for the show or whatever that they were kind of gesturing at has disappeared. Right? It's kind of just like is not fully there. You just get this crap instead. Right, and I think that kind of is related to the obsession with the past and fan trolling and just like, just playing about with kind of stupid little bits of continuity over and over and over again. I think it's a lack of real ambition to really like change and create like a new style of writing the program.
I'm not inherently against bringing stuff back. I don't get a lot of the nostalgia tingles that a lot of people get, but I think old stuff has baggage that can be really useful. And interesting to play with. Like, I'm a big fan of how Gridlock brings back the macro.
Yes.
And, like, cannibalizes them to make a point. I think that's really cool. But you've got this line where the Doctor's explaining who the Rani is to Unit, and he says, "This should be the best day of my life. Another Time Lord. It means I'm not alone." Right? He just says that, and it's, like, very flat. It's just an explanation of who she is. And this made me think that we get that in Utopia, as an emotional process, right? The Doctor goes through the experience of, oh my god, I'm not alone. Oh no, this should be good news, but it's not, because who is it? And we follow the Doctor through, the emotions of realizing that in a way where here it's just, yeah, this should be good, but it's not good anyway. She's a crazy time lady. We don't get the emotional investment in the returning elements.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of Space Babies when he does the whole explanation of how it's gone, Gallifrey's gone, my planet's gone, I'm the last of the Time Lords, I'm the last of my species. Just kind of, we're still doing the whole like rehashing of the beats, but we're so emotionally disinterested in them that it begs the question of why we're even doing them at all. It's this weird thing. Like, on one hand, you can see the idea of, well, the Doctor isn't as hung up on this stuff anymore. But then, like, why are we telling this story? Like, it is strange. Like, why? Because it feels like it's preoccupied with this stuff about Last of the Time Lords and all that and Gallifrey, but not preoccupied enough to try and mine it for emotional drama or conflict or characterization or anything like that. So when she's just saying like, oh yeah, it should be the best day of my life, but it's not because she's bad, it just makes the show feel a little bit more like devoid of emotion. And
like Omega only ends up getting like 4 minutes of screen time. Right in the middle of this episode he turns up and then he gets shot in the face very quickly and he's gone, which, you can read as RTD bringing back a thing and then going, haha, isn't it silly that I brought this back and getting rid of it? But I would suggest just doing something else. If you've not really got the idea, or if you've not, got a story to tell around that idea, you can just do a different thing. You don't need to bring back the old thing to say it's stupid to bring it back. You can just not bring it back.
And if your big moment of the Doctor defeating the big thing is just the moment you're playing 15's theme is when he's just slowly walking forward with a big laser, going, we're back at the level of Jack shooting up the paradox machine at the end of Last of the Time Lords, except that's the entire show now. It's just that on loop. We're in that register, that tone, 24/7.
And the Rani explaining her plan and explaining Omega, and the Doctor explaining Omega and explaining the Rani's plan just eats at these 2 episodes. Like, it's the last sort of 15 minutes solid of Wishworld and the first 15 minutes solid of this one. It just devours screen time and it's so flat.
Yeah, it's like dramatically dead in terms of staging. It's dead. Anything that's just characters standing around these bloody rooms, just like waiting for the story to be able to happen again. Once these characters finish like garbling, just like getting out all this turgid dialogue. Yeah, it's this diabolical screenplay craft. Like it's real shit.
And it's really such a shame because I feel like in the concept, this could have been a great episode for these returning elements. I don't think there's ever been a great Ronnie episode, so that's already kind of a wash from the beginning. But the whole idea of the wish world and the doubts of a Time Lord being powerful and causing the cracks in reality, all these things are thematically very tied into Omega and his whole sort of will and existence. So if this episode had begun with Omega returning, which is kind of what I expected from the cliffhanger. Like, okay, we've done it. Clearly we've broken through to the underworld or whatever because everything is falling into the pit. If it had kind of begun in that register and saved us from half an hour of further exposition from the Ronnie, now obviously that would have trampled all the other character beats, but like that's how you could have done it well. That's how you could have kind of salvaged this. But instead, yeah, it's borderline disrespectful to even invoke these elements if you're not going to use them at all. Yeah.
Like the script lands on what it wants its central dilemma to be. RTD kind of decides, okay, this is what's going to be the main conflict of this episode, trying to save this baby. And that's at least a dilemma. But I think kind of maybe my biggest problem with these two episodes, and this, especially this one, is that I managed to not give the slightest shit about Poppy or the Doctor and Belinda's family or any of that. It just bounces off me entirely. The entire emotional heft of the Doctor fathering a child in this story, I feel nothing. Like it really does not land with me or hit me at all. Any of these scenes where I'm meant to be really caring and really like believing and just invested in the Doctor's quest to save his child and like announce that he's got this, mother and child now to unit and all of that, I feel nothing. I feel like the point in this episode where I kind of start to disconnect from it, where the episode kind of announces to me that it's not going to work, is when the Doctor returns to his home with Anita, and Anita says, well, Poppy's not real. And the Doctor just kind of immediately rounds her like, how dare you? I'm like, it's one thing to buy that he's invested in the reality of this child, but to go that the idea that he just like snap on Anita like that, like on a whim, it's like immediately it's like I'm not emotionally following this. This doesn't. It makes it clear at that point that it's going to go all in on the Doctor being invested in this child, but at that point I'm already kind of like this doesn't feel established enough. It feels like certainly the previous episode didn't feel like it gave us enough to invest in with like fake Doctor and fake Belinda and their fake life for us to really be emotionally sold on the important, on just making them like the crux of this entire story. So it doesn't really work for me. I mean, did you guys like care about or like feel emotions for like this whole Doctor family that he's trying to preserve here?
No.
I liked Poppy. I felt enough for Poppy that bit sort of worked, but I do think it sinks this second half that Wish World isn't actually the story of John Smith and Belinda and their daughter. If it started from their point of view, followed their point of view, and Belinda realizes her husband's gay, the Doctor comes out, and that somehow builds towards the climax that leads into this story and snaps everyone out of their thing. If you just did that as a drama that led into this finale and built up the relationships to Poppy, but no, we gotta do the Rani.
Yeah, I like Poppy, like she's cute and everything, but to me the Doctor doesn't feel like her dad, and it just doesn't. None of it feels quite real to me. I mean, I guess RTD is probably trying to riff on WandaVision with this whole storyline. And in that show, there is quite a sustained period where we're just following the couple and kind of their life slowly. I mean, the kids kind of get magicked up from nowhere again, but they still have like a few episodes where we get into her relationship with the kids and just what is happening with his family. They make more of an effort to make you give a fuck about what's going on in this fictitious life that Wanda has than we get here. So this does not achieve what it's going for, in my opinion.
It is very WandaVision.
Yeah.
Down to the fact that it culminates in a big nonsense laser bat.
Yes.
It's important we preserve that aspect. We all loved that.
It was the Rani all along. She even got a magic wand.
To go back to Billie Piper quickly, I agree with Nia that I think she would actually be good in the role. Like, I think she's an interesting actor and has been since Doctor Who. But it's a real nail in the coffin kind of an ending. It's not good at all. I think ironically, so I think if you had ended, more open-endedly, even if you'd done the regenerate, I would ideally just not do the regeneration and let the audience understand that sometimes stories end and we can skip ahead in time, and it's not important that we see how every character dies and what their last words are. But if we have to do the regeneration, which I guess we have to do because we're all stupid, if we have to do the regeneration, then just not cliffhangering it into a new Doctor, cutting away or whatever else. That would feel like it would probably be more likely to get the show canned, but would be artistically more sound, I think, because this seems to me like Bad Wolf clinging onto the show, right?
Yeah.
They've managed to get someone who will only do it with them, and they've got it on TV that the person who will be the Doctor with Bad Wolf is the Doctor on TV. Ncuti regenerates into someone who is only going to make Doctor Who with Bad Wolf, so therefore Bad Wolf get to keep making Doctor Who. And so it's this attempt to preserve continuity, which makes it feel not like a change at all. That makes it feel to me like we are just going to keep doing the same stuff in 4 years' time when we get a 2-part Billie Piper miniseries.
And there's also the fact that the identity of this new Doctor is a twist contingent on your knowledge of the old RTD era, right? So that's kind of like the biggest continuity thing. It is quite literally a continuity reference. And choosing to make the regeneration a continuity twist, is a naked act of desperation. It does, it taints the ending of this era or this story or whatever. It is the era scrambling to make up for its own unpopularity, I guess, the shambolic state of it, and the lead actor abruptly disappearing, just everything just falling apart at the last minute, and they don't disguise that at all here by having Billie Piper pop up. So it looks very unfortunate, and that's unavoidable.
We couldn't go 2 whole Doctors without going back to a desperation nostalgia casting. That's a really bad sign.
Yeah. It's a bad look.
It's really not good.
I think the good timeline here is keeping Billie and getting rid of Russell. So my hope is she convinces Lucy Prebble to come back and they make some sort of pitch to Disney or the BBC or whoever and kind of gazump him out of the role and then run the show brilliantly from there. That's my dream.
And then Eccleston would finally agree to come back because we got Billie Piper as the Doctor, which he wanted, and we've sacked Russell T Davies, which he also wanted.
Yes, exactly.
So we've healed. Everything's fixed now. I think this will never happen, by the way. I think Billie's only doing this as a favour to RTD. I don't think there's any timeline in which Billie gets RTD sacked and decides she's going to take over from RTD. I think Billie has her own life and career. I don't think it's supplanting RTD from the throne, when Game of Thrones style is particularly on her list of priorities.
I think the show will be off air so long now that I can keep that dream unhindered for a year, 2 years, 3 years.
I would be surprised if we ever saw Billie Piper in a full Doctor Who, special or series. I think we might get a minisode or a little charity video or something, and I think that'll be it.
God, can you imagine? It's just a mini-sode where she regenerates into someone else, and that's it. Oh, I'd be so sad. Just the absolute,
Yeah, but Big Finish would be so happy. This would be the blankest slate that Big Finish has ever gotten.
I don't really know what I actually want, because I love her, and RTD, I lie. This just hasn't worked. The ghost story Who that he talked about, back some time ago, where what if we made it lower budget? I would love that, but I also think that's kind of a It's like a fan dream. Like the last season of Wolf Hall, the BBC, the production of that, the producers of that show said we couldn't even film anything outside because there was no money for it. So we had to film all of the last season of Wolf Hall on sets. So if BBC funded drama is struggling that much, I feel like the show does need outside partners. And if it's not Disney, it's going to be someone else with their own issues. It's all just such a huge headache. The dream of, let's just bring it back to the BBC and we make it really cheaply and we make it really awesome and it's Hinchcliffe 2.0, which is my dream. I think that is just a dream. I don't think, if Wolf Hall can't shoot outside, I think Doctor Who is kind of fucked. So I don't know how the show can work now at all, really. I love many, many years of Billie with Russell back to being good, and the show isn't obsessed with CGI gods anymore, and we just get back to doing good old strong Doctor Who, but I don't know. I think it's just a dream.
Well, what if you get a streaming partner so it has money, but you don't try and make it an MCU clone? What if you you have money, but you also make it good and not like this weird wannabe entity? Like maybe this might be a crazy idea.
Oh.
I feel like that combination might not be completely implausible.
The Disney era feels really wasteful to me.
Yeah.
Like I wince at the spending of money on screen. And I understand that some of that's because I'm a slim portion of the audience, and the scenes for me are the ones where they fold a coat out of existence, and the scenes with the big dinosaurs being shot by lasers are for people younger than me. I get that. And I don't think it's bad that they're using the money for the people younger than me. But also, you know, Deep Breath starts with a big CGI dinosaur, like the big CGI dinosaurs in this one, and it's incorporated into the story. It's made a big thematic component of the episode that there's this big dinosaur that's used to parallel the Doctor, and oh, look at that, we're using the budget to tell the story.
I think the show needs to make its own niche again, rather than trying to go into the Stranger Things niche or the Marvel. They're not even niches, are they? They're huge. The Marvel or whatever. I think Russell did it right in 2005, where New Who was very derivative of Buffy and Angel, but it was very much its own thing as well. It was Torchwood that was like too straightforwardly derivative of Buffy. Doctor Who was synthesizing stuff from Buffy, but in its own unique way, which then other shows like other shows extracted from very heavily. I think it just needs to do that again, rather than trying to circle, what if we like WandaVision, what if we like these other things? I think it needs to, even if it's a cheaper niche or a niche that might have less overt, large audience appeal, a smaller audience that stays with you is still an audience, which is better than what the show is currently having, I think.
To be honest, I feel even in trying to imitate all of these things like Marvel, Stranger Things, whatever the hell, it's not even doing like the things that... I mean, yeah, I have not watched Stranger Things, so I'm not some Stranger Things expert. But certainly, at least in Marvel's case, and you can kind of debate like how well they do this at all. But the Marvel stuff still tries to get you to care about the characters sometimes.
Yeah.
They try to, it doesn't always work, but they try and have sort of character arcs-ish going through the different films. They try and give you the sense of a family of characters.
Yeah. So
that you give a fuck when they all turn up through the portals. It's like, yay, it's Glupshito, he turned up, oh my god, I loved him when he did that thing. It's that. Whereas I think even if you have a season, like with season 2, like you may think that like season 2 is a stretch of broadly decent to good episodes, but nonetheless, like all of them, I think are ultimately harmed in a very real way by the disinterest in who the Doctor and Belinda are and what is going on between them. So there is none of that sense of like an actual like family of characters who I guess the audience can feel close to or feel like genuine like a connection with, which RTD1 put so much bloody effort into, with Rose and her family and the whole Power of the State kind of scenario, and which, Moffat put so much bloody effort into with Amy and Rory and Clara and Bill. Like, that is kind of the essence of it. So I think RTD2 is not even imitating correctly, because it's not like doing that basic television thing of getting this ensemble of characters that you have or whatever, and getting them to actually really work and really putting like investment into them. So if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter how much bloody money you spend or how many effect shots you have. Like it's not walking the walk.
It's so weird that one of the main things that the show's taken from the MCU is the just bleak, sterile aesthetic the flatness and dryness of everything, which is exactly what people don't like about the MCU stuff. It's all big compounds and grey-white rooms, and generally I think that when that stuff's successful, it's because because they've given a standalone story to an interesting writer-director, and sort of loosely webbed it into a larger thing. Where here what they seem to have taken from that is the arch interconnections and loriness and the ugly aesthetic, and not done the writer-director thing.
Yeah, the sort of tactical kind of military aesthetics, kind of mechanical, like big kind of machines and things kind of feel vaguely like that. In a way, when I think of like the unit tower shooting its big guns or whatever at the sort of fantasy-esque bone beasts, and you've got wish creatures flying around the place, that sort of collision, maybe I'm off base here, that feels a little bit Marvel inspired as well, because in that sort of Marvel kind of cinematic comic universe, you've got the actual collisions of, you've got the mythical magical characters and the gods and things, and then you've also got the Iron Man, kind of the regular kind of superhero world, and you've got the kind of high-tech characters, you've got this. So it feels like those films are kind of deliberately doing a kind of aesthetic collision sort of thing there, which in practice maybe risks homogenizing everything. Like part of maybe one of the sort of discomforts that people don't, one of the things that people kind of find disappointing about the MCU's aesthetic sometimes is that things that should be more comic-y and like flashy and colourful get kind of sucked back towards this more prosaic kind of sterile kind of look to kind of make the disparate things look more cohesive together, which is kind of a problem. And I think maybe that's something similar is almost happening here sometimes a little bit, when you've got all the wish creatures and things and the outlandish stuff kind of compressed down into like unit kind of shooting guns, kind of unit sort of action scenes. It just feels like it's doing that a little bit as well. Like they're kind of slopping everything together.
The whole swing into magic for this era does feel like, Doctor Strange magic. It's all pew and blam, and it's basically the same as everything else, but technically it's magic, rather than the weird and the unexplainable that you get glimpses of in 73 Yards and One. But hey, the Doctor shot Omega with a big gun. It was a gun hanging on a wall. There was a gun hanging on the wall in the second act, and then in the third act, it shot Omega. It's cool, isn't it?
And it's only usable as a gun because it's gun-shaped for no clear reason. Like, it's just got a long bit at the end, and that's why you can use it as a gun. That's the only reason.
Any GPS, if it clocks up enough miles as you're flying around the universe, will work as a gun.
As long as it has a barrel.
If it's gun-shaped, yeah.
Yeah, I should have figured that out from the sonic screwdriver comments. I personally didn't think that the Doctor whipping around the sonic screwdriver was remotely like a gun, but it turns out that any vaguely gun-shaped thing is actually a gun in this universe. It's good to know. Same logic.
I was discussing the Vindicator moment with a friend earlier. I think it's the worst dialogue in the episode, actually, where he milks it like a beat too long, where if only I had a weapon hiding in plain sight, and we can see it as the viewers, and then he actually says, wait a minute. And then the power of 1 billion supernovas just sounds so infantile. Anyway, this person brought up that it sounds a bit like, if you've ever been, if you think back to like high school, and you might have been in an exam where you had to do a creative writing thing, and you've like ran out of time, and you like need to finish the story in like 2 sentences as quickly as you can. It kind of has a smack of that to it, with how just ridiculously and overtly it like wraps everything up, and just the crapness of the dialogue. I really don't. There's moments sometimes in episodes like this where I kind of feel like depersonalized out of the whole, and I have this moment of and I see the strings, and it all just feels like crap television, which I guess it is. Yeah, I really dislike that moment. All the crap like Belinda sexist narrative stuff later, at least it kind of feels like storytelling. I just think it's really ugly storytelling. But that Vindicator moment, I feel like I'm just watching a writer get bored.
I felt something similar, and sort of a cop-out for more understandable reasons around the regeneration. Just, I don't think, have we ever seen the Doctor just kind of put his hands together and force himself to regenerate? That was new to me. I was like, oh, okay, this is like we got to the point in the script where it's time for the energy to start shooting out of his limbs. So we're just going to make that happen. Same thing with the Vindicator. We got to the point where he needs to start shooting Omega with something. Oh, wait. Yeah.
I mean, well, the entire essence of that idea that you can just change all of reality if you pump enough regeneration stuff into the time vortex through the TARDIS. I mean, it's the point at which you can say, I mean, all of this, it's not so much story logic as just, well, I need the story to do this thing, so I will make up a reason for it to happen. And it's like, it's sort of, we've abandoned any kind of attempt at establishing like a system of ideas or things here. It is completely like free form. Like I'm purely doing like the bare minimum of what I need to achieve with the scripts. And I think in the case of the regeneration, I think he wants it to feel magical and mystical and profound. Whereas in the case of the Vindicator, it's just like, well, I think maybe kids will like the Doctor shooting a big gun. Won't that be cool if you're like an infant or something? And it feels kind of more cynical in that case. I just feel like the whole in the writer's tale, when RTD talks about how last minute he writes things, sometimes I think this entire swerve in RTD2 towards kind of a malleable reality is purely so he can do that more, like purely a practical choice, so he can write things like this and not have to spend more hours kind of fretting over it and trying to make it make sense. Like now he doesn't have to make it make sense anymore. Now he can just make shit up the way he was always doing, but now he has like a tacit justification for it.
So much of the dialogue in this episode just struck me as, the first thing you write. You're sketching out a scene quickly, and the Doctor pulls the gun off the wall that we've established has the power of 1 billion supernovas in it, so he says 1 billion supernovas. A lot of it's just straight line. Like, the Doctor's gonna regenerate, and he goes, oh yeah, I was the best face. Just so much of it is... And I get, good scripts take time, and they didn't have any time, and whatever. But it's just unpoetic line to line for so much of the episode.
Nate, you brought up 15's regen being oddly staged when he just like randomly starts, I guess, kind of suiciding and just like killing himself to save Poppy or whatever. I think this goes without saying, all of us will probably feel the same way on this. Maybe not, but like, obviously it kind of tanks the episode in some ways, but I don't begrudge Ncuti for leaving in the slightest. And I think people have a kind of a weird perspective on this in some ways. Ncuti joined Doctor Who to be Doctor Who and to act as Doctor Who and to be in episodes of Doctor Who as Doctor Who. And I know he wasn't in all of season 1 because of sex education and everything, but he wanted the show and he joined it to be in the show. And my read on why he left, I know people could argue different things and, apparently he said different things while doing his plays and whatnot. But I think whatever he thought of the role and the process and everything, an actor, I'm sure Gig will agree, they join productions to act in them. And because of the weird Disney freeze where they're not renewing it, which I actually think is pretty normal for like a streaming company to wait. That's kind of what they do with a lot of things. I think Russell got cocky and hopeful, thinking they would re-up very quickly and thinking everything would go great and they'd keep rolling on more and more spin-offs and more seasons. But to just be waiting around for the show you're a part of and for the show not to be being made, I get why he'd go, I'm going to move on. Because it's not like they were doing season after season and Ncuti was like, man, I'm tired of making Doctor Who. It was the opposite. They weren't making Doctor Who. And he left Doctor Who. My presumption is because they weren't making any Doctor Who, which I completely understand, and I think that's fine.
But to be honest, for it to be worth staying trapped in that limbo where you can't make anything for like another year, but you're still committed to doing this thing in like a year's time, yet another season, I think for that to be worth committing to and putting up with, the show would have to be like better and more of a success than it has been.
Yeah.
And I think it would have to be more of a better showing for him and just for generally, it would have to have been more of a phenomenon, just like more beloved, more popular, just more everything. And it wasn't any of those things. I think we may have differing opinions on like how well like Ncuti comes off in the show, like how well the show served Ncuti, and clearly, I mean, I don't begrudge him for leaving at all. to be honest, I wouldn't begrudge any actor for leaving a show that's doing shit like this Rani Omega storyline. To be honest, frankly, I feel like it's. I don't want to frame it as like, oh, the show was unworthy of his talents, because I think sometimes he hasn't. I won't finish that sentence, but like it's just this version of the show is clearly something he wanted to escape, and I completely understand that.
And if Disney doesn't renew the show, that decision is going to age very well. That's as easy as that.
Yeah, ultimately, I think this was a series of insane decisions from Bad Wolf. They cast an actor who couldn't make a lot of the first series, and like it had to be clear. We knew it had to be clear they wouldn't be able to hold on to him for ages. And that was a trade-off they made, and then it came back and hit him in the face. So it's hard to feel that much sympathy, to be honest.
Yeah, basically in every case, it's their own hubris that's come back to bite them in the ass. Like, and you know, they had every chance not to make season one that way, not to write each episode season one that way. There's a lot of talk about how, if only we had more episodes, but like even if season one and season two were both 13 episodes, if they were all written the way these 16 episodes have been, like the same problems would be there, right? They wrote it in this style, and it is the way they chose to write the episodes they did have that caused them to lack kind of the things that would have made it more successful. It's just like, yeah, you really can't. There's no one else to blame here but the creative leadership. Sorry.
Also, the Bad Wolf team have lost their lead actor in various ways, like 4 times.
Yeah, it's like some sort of curse.
They lost Eccleston, Freema, Gibson. What a mess.
Belinda is my least favourite New Who companion. Well, maybe not my least, but I cannot. I mean, it feels weird because she's so nothingy. So many different versions of her get overwritten and just replaced in rapid succession in this episode. But like every time we get a glimpse of like base Belinda or default Belinda, I'm like, who are you? Shut up. You have so little investment put into who you are as a person. I just like that little moment when she's talking to the doctor. I used to say, "Get me home." It's like she feels like the ruin of a storyline that didn't happen. She feels like a last minute, really half-assed insertion to replace something that was gone, something that is gone. And she feels like, and I feel like Varadol almost knows it sometimes. Like she knows she's been given a complete like blank like vacuum of a character, and she plays it in a fitting manner. So some of those lines, like I just it's so really I have lots of spite for everything that character has become. You know, again, like promising in episode 1, just fucking absolutely contemptible everywhere she's gotten since, in my opinion. With the exception of that one flashback in Story in the Engine when she was a nurse. I liked that. Everything else, bin. Like, I take Yaz over this. I take bloody Ryan and Graham over this.
Wow.
Ryan, Yaz, Graham, at least they had little musical motifs. They were very slight. Unless I'm going crazy, I never found anything linking Belinda musically across the whole season, which feels like even Murray conceding this character is like a bit vacuous.
It's weird how similar to Yaz it is, where, as this podcast documented at great length, she starts in quite a strong place, and then just has all that tension and spikiness eroded over time until she's put in a completely submissive position, and then exactly the same thing happens to Belinda.
That particular thing, like this final beat of her story being do flashbacks to all the previous episodes where they're now different because she's a different character and she has a baby or whatever. I mean, that idea, maybe when RTD came up with that, what if we did flashbacks to all of the previous episodes where they're now different? Like that, maybe that seemed like a cool idea in his head. There's this, it's a dreg idea. It's a self-evidently fucking terrible idea when it would only ever be pulled out when there was no time or room for anything else remotely intelligent. It's such a fundamentally just god-awful thing to do to a companion or a character or a story. Like, let's go back and everything's rewritten now, everything's different. And this character who had barely any character before is now a completely different character. It's just what it feels like to me, an attempt to kind of do what Moffat did with Amy's parents in The Big Bang. Because now Amy's life is rewritten a little bit there. Like now she's always had parents whereas before they were, erased by the crack. We've kind of retroactively edited her life to heal it, make it better. But you know what Moffat didn't do there? He didn't try and pin the entire last 15 minutes on the episode on how emotionally important Amy's parents were. And like Amy's parents, they're like they're a hand wave almost. Like they're just a little detail of her life. Whereas it's what Amy actually went through in the season we watched that matters. That hasn't gone. She still remembers it, because memory is the whole big point with Amy. That was the emotional crux of that. None of that is erased or deleted or now meaningless. Whereas with Belinda, that very important aspect is gone. But it's like he's taken the Big Bang as tacit permission to do this companion life rewriting shit. And the effect is so much worse. I have to wonder, those little flashback clips to say Lux and the well. I wonder, do we know, were they part of the reshoots? Because that would have been a lot of costume to recreate, wouldn't it? Is there some tell that they were actually done much later, but they just very faithfully recreated the looks and feels of those original episodes? Or was it actually somehow a pre-planned thing? Because surely it wasn't.
The camera angles and makeup don't line up exactly, so it does look like it was reshot if you look at them side by side.
Okay.
They're all in the TARDIS as well.
That must have been fun having to get them back into those. Yeah, that's a good point actually. On the TARDIS, yeah, no, that makes the most sense.
Great stuff. What a production.
I think RTD often brings up the idea that what he's bringing to life is a child's version of Doctor Who, what a child imagines in their head. This is like a child's imagination, a 12-year-old vision of Doctor Who with light and colour and whatever the hell. Sometimes I wonder, is that actually what this is? Or is this just representative of what people in suits have decided children should be condemned to imagine for the rest of their lives? I wonder, does a child's imagination actually work like this? I do wonder sometimes. It just feels a little bit like it's actually less interesting than that. It doesn't actually, or that, I guess I've said this before, in trying to be childish with how you imagine things, you're actually depriving kids of the actual fuel for their imaginations. In a way, you're giving them something that's deliberately watered down to be kiddie-ish, or what you think kiddie-ishness is like. You're kind of taking away the stuff that kids actually like, which is the stuff that's not quite for them, but that gives them material to spin to their own imaginative world. I feel like we're not actually getting the child's version of imagination here. It just feels like an adult, a man in his 60s doing this weird imitation or mimicry of what he thinks a kid would like.
And that's how the show is going to be remembered. If we go into a hiatus now, this is the taste that's being left in people's mouths. And I think it's going to be a really hard barrier to overcome to jumpstart things again. It's not a season 27 thing, that's for sure.
With this whole pattern thing people like to talk about, with New Who following the same arc as Classic Who, we are basically, it's long GNT, isn't it? All the weird cringe vibe, I guess, that Classic Who started to accumulate in the 80s, becoming a bit of a public embarrassment. We are straight back there. It's just fully, it's got its own take on that collapse. But the idea that the show has just become this weird kind of running up and down corridor silly monsters could have been slightly better written. Chris Chibnall thing on Open Air. It really has just managed to wind its way right back into that situation.
I guess then we'll all see each other in 16 years for the next episode of Doctor Who.
Unless they hire us to write the next line of Virgin New Adventures. Yeah, we might see each other a bit sooner.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
We can find the Fitzroy Tavern. Will be the new Fitzroy lot. The new cabal kind of ruining the show for the next 30 years.
Some time travels going on. Oliver and Nate and Gig and I, all those words being exchanged before came from the 5th of June, 2025, around a week after the Reality War aired, which was 31st of May, 2025. It's currently the 2nd of December, 2025. So in that original chat on Reality War, lots of things were said and lots of things were discussed in a way differently to how the last 6 months have been talked about. I was talking about the Billie Piper Doctor in a very different way then than I or probably most people would now. I can't say loads has happened in the last 6 months because very, very, very little happened to do with the show, which is kind of interesting in its own right. So Missy from New Zealand and Gig, of course, from England, are going to kind of have a second discussion of reality war in the year. With me, how does that sound, guys?
Oh, it sounds wonderful.
I would say one pretty big thing sort of happened, or rather didn't happen, kind of pertaining to the show. Mainly kind of the absence of a certain, deceased head in a jar kind of a corporation in this future of the show.
Yeah, I want to, I'm going to spend like 60 seconds quickly doing the timeline, and then I want you guys to share all your thoughts. So the timeline doesn't begin when the reality war transmitted in the 31st of May 2025. I actually think the relevant timeline for this discussion begins on the 11th of October 2024, when on the Graham Norton show, Ncuti Gatwa talked about filming season 3 next year, meaning 2025. And as we know, that was cut out of the actual broadcast of the Graham Norton show. Deadline, the trade poked into that, and the BBC was saying, no decisions on the future of Doctor Who will be made until season 2's done. Deadline's understanding was that Ncuti comment was cut to liven up his interview. Moving forward some months, around April, May, the main filming for season 2, including the reality war, finished. Then apparently it was February 2025 when new material was added to the reality war, as Gig and I and Oliver and Nate discussed. Reality war, 31st of May. Oliver, Gig, Nate discussion, 5th of June. Then a few months passed where nothing happened. And it got pretty weird in that kind of interregnum period. But 28th of October 2025, what Gig is alluding to, happened. The Disney deal was finally announced to be dead. The war between the land and the sea will be like the kind of rump state extant spin-off, broadcasting after we're aware the deal has died. But the deal has died. No more Disney with Doctor Who. And some weird wording on what's going to come next, a Christmas special for 2026, which the director of drama at the BBC says, "We are delighted that Russell T Davies has agreed to write us another spectacular Christmas special for 2026. Weird wording there, but the show isn't dead, but the Disney deal is dead. It's 2nd of December 2025 now. I guess the only other relevant thing I can think of was just more stuff about that original ending of the reality war has kind of trickled out over the months. Carol Ann Ford's been fairly open, saying, you didn't see the episode, which was to sort of introduce my coming back, where I was holding hands with a beautiful little tiny black child, 3 years old, and we were watching through the window somewhere where the audience wasn't supposed to know where we were supposed to be, and we were watching by my newly embodied grandfather, who is now Ncuti, and watching him have a wonderful time singing and dancing in a party in a shop opposite where we were, which finally clears up that image, like the thumbnail image we got from the marketing of the episode, which was a scene that we didn't actually ever see. And then other little things have come out. The parent of Poppy's actress is, been reposting on TikTok rumors or leaks or whatever about basically the same thing, that the season was originally going to end with more stuff about the Susan relationship and Poppy and all this stuff. And we can't talk about it, but all these things were originally going to happen. So some more, if anyone even cares, some more stuff came out about that, but basically we don't know shit about the Billie Piper thing. The Disney deal is dead. The show is continuing in some form. Thoughts on all that and the kind of vibe of the last 6 months?
I know in the original kind of discussion for this episode, I was like, release the Susan cut. Since then I've 180'd on that. I really don't want them to ever release the deleted Susan ending of this episode, because I say that, it might be interesting to see, but I'm really, really glad, because I feel like we kind of dodged a gigantic bullet with that now. Possibly the biggest bullet ever. I mean, the kind of bullet where like death would be preferable to catching whatever that bullet was, because I think whatever kind of big idea RTD seemed to be pursuing, with Poppy probably being Susan's mum or something, sounds like perhaps just the worst, most ridiculous, really most pointless and unwanted idea he could possibly have come up with. Like, it's incredible to come up with, for your idea for bringing back Susan to be, let's solve the mystery of how Susan's parents were born. like that's the thing anybody cares about regarding Susan, like not her relationship with the Doctor, not kind of the early life of the Doctor, but let's have the Doctor have a magic child, and then it's just, yeah, I'm really really glad that has not come to fruition. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but certainly that's how I feel on that aspect. As for the show, well, whatever, you know, already felt dead to me after Reality War, so it's just like, okay, now it's more dead, maybe. It doesn't feel to me like season 3 is a real thing, like in any sense. You know, God knows how many years it will be before anything materializes. I'm struggling to imagine Bad Wolf and RTD still being there when it happens, but I mean, who knows or cares?
Yeah, the vibe is dead in the water. It's so dead that it's kind of freeing in a way, in that, like, I truly have no idea what's going to happen, and yeah, like Gig said, who cares? The future is very open in a way that I don't think it has been for Doctor Who in a long time, but not in a positive way. I also agree, by the way, that I think whatever was going on with this prospective Susan story sounds like it would have been absolutely horrid. It's the kind of thing that would have been like a very dangerous tightrope to walk, and the end result could have been at best okay. But like it's so going to crash in a fire, so I'm also glad we dodged that bullet. But it's a weird freeing feeling of not having any idea what's going on, and not really, I'm not worried. Like, something's going to happen eventually. I mean, we've got the War Between coming up and some random Christmas special next year, but it's just so nothing. It could be anything. It's probably going to be nothing.
It is a little bit sad. I know I go on a lot about who cares, you know, I feel nothing, whatever. It is still a little bit saddening, though, I think, for RTD2 to have basically turned out to be, certainly to have brought New Who as a ongoing thing to like a screaming, juddering halt with a complete question mark around its future.
Yeah,
like it's a shame. You know, rewatching this episode and the ending of it, I was like, God, what a bloody disappointment. Yeah, a bit crestfallen. That's it.
Why didn't he just push the make episode good button?
Yeah, why didn't he just make it really like Chib? You know, even Chib knew how to do that.
I don't know how much like I don't want to talk too much or read too much into this stuff with like the Poppy actor parent going back and forth on TikTok with people, because there's stuff you can talk all day about that sort of thing, but I feel like it's very like tea leaves or secondhand, third hand, fourth hand sort of stuff. But basically all this, I think it's kind of immaterial how true or not it is that Poppy was the mother of Susan or whatever, and where that would have went. I think the bigger thing for me that confuses me about all that stuff is, like RTD says all the time, the deal was, you know, a certain amount of episodes, which they were fulfilling. The deal with Disney was a certain amount of episodes to be fulfilled with 2 seasons of Doctor Who and a short spin-off. That's fine, and I get the no decisions made until after season 2. That all makes sense to me. You can debate whether it was a good idea to do the deal in the first place, but I think everything there makes sense. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is if RTD was doing this big serialized arc, whether it was with Susan, like Carol Ann Ford's indicating, or all this stuff, why would you, like, if you were going to do a tenterhooks thing, it just seems so like 2000s TV and ill-conceived to me to kind of cliffhanger it on the end of a season where you don't know if Disney are going to re-up you for like another season or 2 or whatever. That just, it's leaving kind of what you've produced as that 2-season and spin-off unit as like fundamentally incomplete. And I know that like shows used to do this on like network TV, where they would really do a huge cliffhanger to try and pressure the audiences, to pressure the networks into, you know, renewing and everything. But I don't feel like that really fits with the huge years of distance we get with how streaming TV is produced now. It seems so oddly like out of tune with how TV is made, which isn't like what Russell is. He's usually so in tune, finger on the pulse with how TV is made. It just seems like catastrophic to me. Even if I would have hated whatever he was doing with Poppy and Susan or whatever, to like kind of cliffhanger it on like a bet that he could get it renewed. And then of course Ncuti deciding to leave, you know, fucks all that anyway. It just seems so mismanaged, not just from a story perspective, but from like a production perspective, that it like baffles me, because I feel like RTD is usually very good with this kind of marriage between story and production and everything like that. But kind of leaving it to chance, it just astounds me. And I don't think it's almost, what's the term? I don't know if deserved is correct, but it feels kind of karmic that it all fell to pieces that way. Because rather than give us like a complete story and a satisfying story within the amount of episodes he got from Disney, he tried to do this and then it blew up in his face because of Ncuti and Disney not liking it in the first place. I feel it's kind of deserved. I really wish he hadn't made things this way. I wish he had just done a kind of this, even if he, look, I know he was meaning to continue with Ncuti, but I feel like he should have just made 2 seasons that told whatever interesting story he has to tell with Susan or otherwise, and then audiences at Disney go, that's good, let's do more, and then he does like another thing, rather than this insane like feint, which is how it's come across to me. Do you guys know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. It feels so incredibly like reckless and misjudged to do that. And also the thing about it that gets me is that just like the reality of the fact that like Carol Ann Ford is, I don't know how old she is exactly, but she's very old.
Carol Ann Ford's 85.
So even if like everything did work out, it still feels like a really stupid idea to be like, oh, I've got this idea for bringing Susan back into the show, and I'm gonna do it with a several series long build up of unrelated things, in the hopes that maybe we can do it later with her. There are so many reasons why would you not just do it now? Just do the thing, like Surf Dracula. Just do the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're thinking about it as a several season long build up to Susan, but I'm sure when they conceived season 1 and 2, it was the great story of Ruby Sunday and the 15th Doctor. It's so complete, and Susan would just be the next thing after that, right? Rather than the telos of the whole thing that it was all leading up to. It's just the trouble is, if you actually watch season 1 and 2, you realise, oh, there's actually not much of a story here at all. So it feels like it's just a long setup for Susan, because I mean, what exactly is going on in the interim? Like, who gives a fuck about Belinda? It's like you see what actually happened here.
It does feel like simultaneously, it's like Ruby and the Doctor kind of feels like a thing. I mean, we can debate how much of a thing it was, but yeah, it's like it's its own thing. And then the ending of Empire of Death, I know a lot of people connected what was going on with Ruby and her mother to the Doctor and Susan, and so there was like not direct tie-in stuff, but like thematic setup. But then season 2 with Belinda was absolutely nothing. So the Susan stuff at the end is like really the only thing there to grab onto. And then there is also the fact that it's like a 3-season arc of old woman in the background.
Yes, and yeah, another one.
Yeah, that's surreal. Yeah, it feels really. I don't like the fandom the fans really like Susan. This is like the oldest part of the show. There's still like an active living connection to, and also people just do like the actual character. It's, people, I don't think there's issues with Susan in the original seasons, but I don't think people would be talking about Carol Ann Ford and Susan as much if they didn't have some affection for the actual character. People do like the actual character, but I feel like it's actually really mercantile, like what Russell does here. I feel like it's really like parlaying people's affection for the character into this weird thing of give me more. I just really don't like it. Something I really disliked about when serialized TV on like networks would used to do this. I love a good finale which gives you closure, and I hate these finales which are clearly just like a kind of a threat to the network and like in a way kind of to the audience as well. It just feels so like unstoryish. And I feel like Russell normally doesn't do that. Like, he has his cliffhangers when Ben Cook doesn't talk him out of them. He has his cliffhangers and stuff to lead on to the Christmas specials or whatever. But like Parting, Doomsday, even Last of the Time Lords, they all like give you an ending for like the character stuff going on in that episode, more or less. And then it's like a separate thing is, oh, and by the way, this is going to happen next, so get excited. It just feels so like cold and mechanical to me, the kind of way Susan ended up being used here. Even in like this original ending with her like watching from across the shop or whatever, that's still like, and keep tuning in and hopefully Disney makes more. I really dislike the contrast between like fans like Susan, I like Susan, let's use that. It feels ugly to me, basically. I feel like if Russell has all this affection for Susan and Carol Ann Ford and everything, he should have just done it now. And then if it works well, maybe use Susan more or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It feels like playing everyone, which I really don't like. When it's like sat side by side with like these soppy Doctor Who magazine things of everyone loves Carol Ann Ford and I love Carol Ann Ford. Like, do you see the disconnect that like rubs against me there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way she first reappears is just like a teaser in Interstellar Song Contest. Like, that's a big return after X number of years. Yeah, and it's literally just like a fan baiting, kind of audience baiting thing. It's entirely sensationalized, and there's not really much in the way of kind of giving a fuck about any story content for Susan and the Doctor there. It's powerfully disappointing.
The script, sort of, the shooting script, so like the final camera script, was released for Reality War fairly recently. I know people were trying to read a lot into like the dates or whatever on it, but I feel like that's kind of, who cares? Like, we already know the ending was an additional shoot or whatever. The only thing I really noticed there was the 13th Doctor scene was even wankier originally. Like, there's shout-outs to the 6th Doctor's coat and stuff. And then, you know how it used to feel like Chibnall hadn't quite watched some of the Moffat era like properly because he was like referencing things in weird ways, especially to do with Gallifrey or whatever. I feel like Russell has maybe misinterpreted some of the Chibnall era here because he's like got the 13th Doctor talking about being summoned from the Edge and then like returning to the Edge, but am I misremembering? The Edge was like a mindscape thing, right? Like, it's not a place. It's like a thing inside. It's like a Paul Cornell-esque inside the Doctor. There is like this, it's not a real space, basically. But then the 13th Doctor is like talking about traipsing back and forth from the Edge to go visit Ncuti.
Or maybe she was intended to be a Force ghost.
Yeah, I think probably they changed that because probably they noticed it doesn't make sense. So they need to put her in physical reality to have her show up there. Maybe. Maybe RTD was considering that meeting between them to be more of a mindscape thing originally, and then just sort of changed his mind later. But yeah, I guess it'd be very awkward trying to shift from mindscape to reality to back and forth. Like, you know, probably just referencing the Edge there. Like, who would care? I'm not sure even like people who remember and recognize 13 would actually give that much of a shit.
And I think that's like why he did it. It's like the recognizableness for the Chib stands in the audience of the Edge trumps the like logic of how it works. Like, who cares? It's like, oh, it's the Edge. That's from Power of the Doctor. I know that.
To be fair, the Power of the Doctor is one of the few episodes from Chib that Chib fans sort of like celebrate, I guess. So it's like, yeah, it would make sense to reference that.
No one celebrates the Reality War. I can't think of, I think anyone I've seen like really champion this episode. Even like big fans of RTD2. It's so... I was talking with Gig earlier, watching it back, what really stood out to me wasn't like how bad the writing was. The acting is bad. Like the main Rani and Ncuti here and everyone, it's just like, I get that the script is bad, and I get, even if the actors like the script, there's very little emotional reality here to like cling on to. But even then, I feel like I'm watching like, not even the Sarah Jane Adventures. I feel like I'm watching something for very, very, very young people here with the delivery everyone's doing. It just really pulls me out of any truth in the scenes or whatever, such as there is. It feels, I know how like nerdy, incel-y this sounds, but I feel like somewhat embarrassed watching it. I'm hoping that embarrassment is like me feeling secondhand embarrassment for like RTD or Ncuti, who I know can do excellent work. But do you guys get what I feel like this is part of the reason the episode seemed to wisp out of the fandom oddly quickly, like a couple of weeks after it aired. It's like everyone, in my experience, so many people seem to stop talking about it and sort of want to stop talking about it. I feel like it really muffled the fandom in a way that Empire of Death didn't. Empire of Death has loads of issues, but there's some of those issues are interesting, and you know, there's some good stuff in the episode, especially at the end, grating against all the bad stuff. But Reality War to me just felt like this improvisational babies like nonsense with like no heart to it, which I feel like is why it felt kind of suffocating. I don't know if you guys felt embarrassment or suffocated or anything like I did.
Not embarrassment, but like I completely get what you mean, and I think part of it, it's like what you're saying about the performances is part of it. Is, to me, it's like there's not really anything good to cling on to there. Like, there's not a lot to praise, and I think that's a big reason that no one is wanting to talk about it, because like even with like really bad episodes, people like to talk about the few things that they like if they're feeling charitable, and we talked about the few good bits of Empire of Death, but there's, well, to me at least, there's just so very little good in the Reality War. It's not completely, I'm sure there's something, and that plus the like general state of things where like people aren't feeling charitable anymore. Like, even if there was a few good things to talk about. Like, it's very overshadowed by everything else going on.
It does make me quite curious to see this CBeebies cartoon spin-off, to see whether it feels any meaningfully different from this, because like you say, I think the acting, a lot of the performances in this episode do kind of feel so knowingly mannered and stagey, and sort of a bit emotionally disinterested in what's happening. Like, it's we could see Kerala, and it's like it's so forced. It feels so forced in a lot of places, and it's both that and the way that even the screenplay is kind of doing the same thing. Like when Belinda kind of says to Ruby, kind of scolds Ruby, it's quite offensive to have a daughter I don't remember. Like, in the wording that RTD uses there, offensive. It's such a bizarre phrase, and it feels like he's taking the piss. And with the screenplays taking the piss, then the actors aren't going to take it seriously either. And it feels so kind of, with the exception of Millie Gibson in the middle of that whole sequence, who has to try and emotionally carry the whole thing. Like, a lot of the episode does just feel like everyone is a bit checked out from it. Like, not physically necessarily. Certainly, Ncuti is putting a lot of 120% physicality into stuff, because he always does. But I think in terms of not sound wanky, but emotional truth, you could say, it does feel like it's being pitched down. Like, you've been talking down to kids in just a lot of ways. It just feels like a very kind of like a production where the idea of making TV everyone's very serious about has mostly just kind of disappeared, with the exception of the production design, of course, which is always great.
Something that grates at me, this is one of those things we talk about where obviously we're all guilty of this, so I'm not trying to separate myself from this, but like, when you get so insular as a Doctor Who fan talking about Doctor Who stuff, you kind of forget, well, it is a TV show and TV shows are produced this way. So some things as fans we're all objecting to are like normal and not weird. Where I'm going with that is, I see lots of salt and rage and negativity raised, often in RTD's defense, over the whole Disney thing of, Disney should have renewed right after season 1, or Disney should have clarified what was happening right after season 1. Russell was put in a really tough spot by Disney not announcing what they were doing with the show until after season 2 aired. But like, the two things that bother me there are, one, the BBC and Bad Wolf and Russell, they all sort this out, this deal. And it's not like they couldn't look at other genre shows Disney's partnered with before to see how things are usually handled. This wasn't foisted upon them. They chose to do this. And the other thing is, it's not that weird for like these big streamers to wait until like most of the order of episodes is done before making a decision. It's not that weird to wait until like after a second season. It's not like RTD or anyone was tricked. Or I know he really wanted to know earlier, but that's just him being like arrogant and like expectant that he was going to get that. That was just a reckless gamble that he took, that he could potentially get a renewal much earlier and then go, like Ncuti was initially saying in 2024 October, go into a season 3 with Ncuti and everything. But people act like the show and Ncuti and RTD were hard done by. And maybe they were, but in that sense, then like nearly every show ever is hard done by. Like, this wasn't an uncharacteristic thing for, the big money men to be like, we're going to wait longer until this is nearly done before deciding what we do. That's just kind of how a lot of streaming TV works. It's part of why there's these huge gaps, these big gaps and then decisions, and then production takes forever to mount up again. It's one of the annoying things about the big expensive streamers. But like, I get that RTD didn't want it to go this way, which is why most of us fans, hearing what he's saying, are like, this is so unfair. But it's not abnormal that it all worked out this way, basically. So I feel like I don't really feel like there's any sin here with how Disney treated them. It's annoying because it disrupted the show so much. But also, like, it was pretty bad what Russell made. And so I understand audiences and Disney not really connecting with it as well. I don't see any big crime here, basically.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me about it is like what we said earlier, like, it feels like unfair and hard done by and like a rough deal, but it only feels that way because it wasn't finished. And it only wasn't finished because Russell T. decided to do all of this shit instead of doing the thing he wanted to do from the beginning. Like what we said about like just doing Susan, if he wanted to do Susan, like just do it instead of leaving it like a cliffhanger. It's hard for me to feel like too sorry for him because he's like, no one made him build this all up into a huge cliffhanger. Like that was like, he chose to do that, and like this is the outcome of that. Like it was entirely possible that Disney would not renew, and they didn't.
See, to me, it actually doesn't feel unfair. It feels perfectly fair. I think it would have been a bad business decision for Disney to renew this show. And yeah, maybe it would have been nicer if they'd kind of brought down the guillotine like much earlier. Just told RTD right after season 1 transmitted, like, we're not doing this shit anymore. But you know, yeah, I think it doesn't really feel unfair to me that they kind of axed the whole thing, because like we say, you know, this is not a show it wasn't astronomically successful, was it? It wasn't the biggest thing on television. It wasn't some great new bloody worldwide smash hit that everybody loved. It was just kind of at best quite mediocre most of the time. So and just really kind of flawed in a lot of ways that this episode's kind of a microcosm of. So yeah, it's just how it is.
I guess that's maybe the only like possibly unfair bit is how long it took Disney to inform them. But I
at the same time, the writing was on the wall for a long time, wasn't it? I think we could all feel they're probably not going to say yes at this point. I feel like for over a year now, that's certainly our vibe. Like, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's left the spin-off in this really bizarre state of like Disney didn't promote it much when they broadcast it in 2026. It's this very odd thing of like having, and I know Pete McTighe's recently been talking about like parts of the spin-off were written and conceived before the whole 60th and Ncuti seasons and stuff. It's this really weird, just extant like relic of a thing. There's no way this is going to happen, but the most hilarious outcome of this whole era would be the spin-off being rather successful and someone, you know, Disney or otherwise going, oh, that performed quite well, more please. But there's zero chance. There's absolutely no chance. Surely.
New iterations of War Between something else and like X and Z, you know, War Between the sky and the space or something. That would be a quite interesting direction for it to go in.
Time and Space. Chibnall could come back and co-showrun it.
Yes! Oh my god, yes, Time and Space gets Swarm and Azure. Oh my god, I'd actually watch that.
The future of the show, I feel like we're in such a weird position because Bad Wolf having hands on the show makes a lot of sense because there's not that many. The British TV production in general is in a rough state right now. Bad Wolf obviously have all these legacy people around that know how to make Doctor Who. There's a lot of sense to it remaining there, but also what they've made hasn't done that well. I guess it's like a devil you know versus devil you don't know thing. Does BBC Studios, you know, wrestle it, or does it stay with Bad Wolf? Can it stay with Russell doesn't work for Bad Wolf. Russell's like a freelancer, you know, in a way, working with them. It's not like he runs the company like Tranter or Gardner. Can it be at Bad Wolf with not Russell? Would anyone want that? Like, it's so hard to pit. I feel like it's kind of trapped right now. Like, the only thing I really don't want to happen to the show is I don't want to see it in the hands of like some big external company, Disney or whatever streamer, especially if it's, you know, not British. And I don't want it to be in the hands of like journeymen who would just kind of do whatever the committees want. That's my only true fear, would be like some very low-rung Marvel directors, Marvel writers doing it just whatever Paramount or Disney or HBO Max would ever want. That's the only thing I don't want. As long as there's some sort of distinctive voice, I don't really care who's doing anything with it. But it just seems like there's such a lack of people who can and would run it, and a lack of ability to get it run with various places. In some ways, I would rather Russell keep doing it than certain other people, just because it's a devil I know. But on the other hand, he's ran this era almost as long as he ran the first era, and I don't think a third one makes sense for him. I don't know. It's a scary thought.
Oh wait, is that actually? Oh god, it's true, isn't it? He has.
Yeah, count the years. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Even though you count the number of episodes and it's like so astronomically fewer.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. And an interesting thing for me, there's a lot of discussion like, oh, of course, Russell screwed it all up. They're definitely getting rid of Russell. We see a lot in the fan base and discussion, but I don't know if that's necessarily true because of the devil you know thing. I think it's more likely for Russell to be like done with it.
Yeah.
And him to decide to leave, then to be pushed out. But yeah, I also don't want people without any sort of creative vision or interest in it I was about to say I don't want it to turn into slop, but I know a lot of people would argue that we've long passed that. And yeah, there is a part of me that would prefer if Russell would stay rather than certain people.
Hey, there's always the secret third option of just nobody doing it and it not getting made at all, which it might be preferable in some cases.
I'm not gonna like cry if that happens. The only thing I don't like there is I hate it when people act like the second wilderness or whatever. The first wilderness was such a specific thing that could only happen because of certain ways, certain rights worked and the certain ways the BBC did and didn't care about the franchise back then. It's not like you're ever gonna get like a 70 novel line that's open to like totally new people. It's with, so little brand oversight. That's never going to happen again. You're going to get like sloppy NSAs, maybe 3 a year, written by the same people, written by the same 2 Justin Richards types and then like 1 YA author. That's what would actually happen in like a second wilderness. And that doesn't sound that amazing to me. And it certainly doesn't sound like sacrificing a TV show, good or bad or otherwise, for. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I can deal with the show being off air. I just don't like this idea. And that's going to revitalize. It's not, you're just going to get like Time Lord Victoria stuff every year. It's going to be more slop if the show's off air versus on air, really, I think.
Hey, you're not looking forward to Circuit Breaker with the Fugitive?
I can't be worse handled. Remember how Time Lord Victoria would have the exclusive like magazine stories? Like if you bought the toys or something, and then everyone was like so anguished over, but I'm not getting the full Dalek story. I've watched the James Goss cartoon, but I don't have the toy, and I don't see it's appeals to a very narrow type of person. I think the transmedia things.
Everyone's just forgotten Doomsday. Remember Doom?
Oh yeah, I've never experienced any of that.
No, me neither. I will be sad. I won't cry. I will be sad if it does go off the air because I do have an emotional investment in it, but I do recognize that that's separate from wanting it to be a good show, wanting it to be competently made, wanting it to not be shit.
I can kind of see a world where it's not really cancelled and it's not really on air, but it's like a classic British thing of, well, every 2 or 3 years there's a special, which I guess would be Russell or whoever's around. I could live with that. I'd rather it be on air as a TV show, but I could live with the every few years one of the Moffat or Chibnall or Russell, whatever, does a Christmas special of like varying quality.
We're edging closer to just turning it into the Sherlock format.
I wouldn't want it to always be Christmas, like for forever, like only Christmas episodes from now on. That'd be a bit unfair. Again, it would be it'd be a shame to lose just kind of regular episodes as well.
Yeah,
because they're all the best stories in like nearly always the interstitial stories, like the nothingy stories, rather than the event episodes. Certainly when it comes to Russell, anyway. So it's like the show gets weaker the less regular it is, because it's losing its main strength, which is in those kind of quote-unquote filler stories. Even like in the 60th, the story everyone likes the most was the kind of nothingy one in the middle, which, got to be the most creative one.
But maybe the CBeebies cartoon will be our saving grace. Because aren't there like going to be like 5 billion episodes of that?
Yeah. I don't know of what length, but yeah. At least something cool about that show is it does show like the BBC care.
Yeah.
Like I don't think some people get like the Michael Grade idea of, and the BBC hates the show and they're glad Russell's not doing it or whatever. Surely of all people, they want the show to be successful the most. It's just like they're struggling, like everyone else in TV is struggling to like make something. I sound like I'm defending the BBC. I guess I am. I don't really want to be. But it's like, it does them no good for the show not to be made regularly. I think they would like it to be made regularly and successful as well. Everything's just not going great right now.
Yeah, and they want it to be relevant to people and to families, people's lives. Otherwise, why commission any sort of spin-off at all, or any kind of like other version of it, or even a CBeebies cartoon of it? Like they want people to care about it. They want to kind of readjust, make it relevant to people somehow, even if it's not in its original form.
I know we all want the ghost stories thing of where the show just gives up on looking like a spectacle at all, but it's such, we can say that because we're the we're like the ensnared audience that's never going to leave. It doesn't matter to us if it looks crap.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard for us to remember it matters to a lot of other people if it looks crap. They're always going to have this core audience, however many of us there are, that are going to watch it in rain, hail, and shine. But I think the idea, I know Russell talks about the ghost stories thing, and I'm sure the BBC's thought about doing it much more cheaply. But I think there's such a risk of, if you make it look kind of like crap, are you damaging the brand in like a way that's really hard to undo, like in the near future? I know you can make episodes where it's not obvious that it's cheap, but then are you making something that's not going to appeal to kids if it's all these very, sapphire and steel type things? I'm sure people think about it every now and again. Can we make the show for like a fifth of the amount of money? But I think there'd be so many risks there that we as fans don't care about, but probably are, like an actual issue. It's not as simple as let's not make the show in 4K and then we have like £1 million more every episode. I mean, my assumption anyway. I could be wrong. Anyway, do we think Billie will be the Doctor in the 2026 thing?
She better be. I'm going to be really mad if she isn't. She gotta be, right?
Yeah, it's... I don't know anymore. Like, it's a shame because obviously I kind of had a delusion after the Billie thing first happened. It's like, oh my god, wow, we're doing Billie Piper as the Doctor. That's going to be so cool. And it kind of became more apparent this was very last minute, just pretty much just a favour to RTD. Her just popping up here, like briefly for like 2 seconds, and she doesn't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody's decided what's going on. It could be bloody anything, you know. And obviously there doesn't seem to be a consensus or anything set in stone about what is supposed to be happening here. It's just like a random stunt, basically, just another stunt of RTD's, just maybe like a little joke. So in terms of how that materializes in a forthcoming episode, I mean, who knows? And I'm prepared to be very disappointed in however that turns out. I hope she's in it in some capacity. She probably will be. I mean, she did just show up, but I have no idea if she'll commit to like a major part or anything more than like another brief cameo. Like maybe she'll regenerate again like 5 minutes into the episode. I mean, who knows? I am terribly interested to see what exactly they do for this special, possibly final special. But it's a big question mark, and I'm not expecting it to be very satisfying either way.
I am choosing to cling to my delusions. She was going to be the Doctor, and then it's going to be renewed for a long era in which she is the Doctor, and it's going to be great. I've just decided that's what's going to happen, and there are going to be no bad episodes.
Yeah, Billie will like use her authority to ban RTD from writing any bad episodes ever again. When I was rewatching it, I noticed that whole thing where Anita is kind of serving the role of a doorstop, and 15 keeps telling her, Anita, keep holding that door open. Just struck me, Clara wouldn't have stood for this. You know, Clara would have you remember that scene in Flatline where she replaces Rigsy with a hairband? It's like, yeah, Clara wouldn't have stood for that. There was another little detail I noticed. I know because there's been a lot of discourse over whether Belinda in season 2 was supposed to be Ruby, whether Ruby was meant to stay on for season 2, and a lot of these plot elements would have happened with Ruby, like Ruby and 15 being Poppy's mother, like they were kind of sort of presented as in Space Babies a little bit, like what happened. And there's a bit in this when Mrs. Flood kind of reveals herself as the Ranis twin of sorts to the unit people, when Ruby and Belinda first see her, and Ruby's like, that's my neighbour, and Belinda's like, that's my neighbour. They both say the same thing. I just suddenly felt like that was really tipping the hand as to the fact that something feels bifurcated here, like making it really obvious, like, hang on a minute, these two things should be one thing, much tidier, you know? It's like something, yeah, it's kind of funny to me.
I don't think people used to say this a lot about the Gymnal era, that like Clara wouldn't have stood for like anything 13 does, and I think it's true for the RTD2 era too. Clara would not have stood for like just about anything that happens in season 2.
Yeah. In a few days, The War Between will start, which, is co-showrun by Pete McTighe. And so I guess we'll finally get... People often talk about whether Pete McTighe could be a future showrunner because, he's done a lot of his own shows and he seems to get on well with all Doctor Who stuff. So looking forward to the vindication, or the... What's the opposite of vindication? The humiliation that will become clear very soon. That's my perspective on the spin-off.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to be optimistic. Again, I find it very easy to choose to be optimistic. I think The War Between is going to be good, even though it's not something I care about at all. I don't like, it looks very gun. It looks like I'm going to be bored to tears. I don't like Unit. Please don't crucify me, everyone. I'm not a huge fan of Russell Tovey. I mean, I'm sure he's a great guy, but I don't like his acting very much. It's like, none of this is working for me, but I'm going to choose to believe it's going to be fun. It does look beautiful. It does look nicely directed. So I have that to lean on.
I'm expecting it to be okay.
I love the composer as well. Lorne Balfe, and we love the director from 73 Yards.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be bad.
I think it'll look good and sound good, and I think it'll be boring and bad because of the story, but hopefully I'm wrong.
I mean, you might have a funny finale, if RTD finales are anything to go by. It might be the finale might be bad enough to be entertaining. I think probably on the whole it will just be okay.
That's something. Hopefully, it's entertaining, not just like dour and dreadful and making us not want to talk about it like the reality war. Like, hopefully, it's like at least entertaining, even if it's not good.
I think the premise is so, like, there is a real premise to this in a way. The reality war just has like sci-fi, God of Omega, Rani, Bigen. It's all completely Poppy, real, not real. It's all completely nonsense reality war. I think the Sea Devils thing, I think that premise could be executed really badly, but it is like an actual thing of, there were creatures that lived here before us, or they're like environmentalist creatures, and humans have screwed the planet up, and now they're like arguing, you don't get to own the planet. There's a lot of stuff there that whether it's poorly executed or not, at least it's like something to talk about. So yeah, I think it'll be more interesting to discuss at least.
And it was parts of this were being written like before any of Ncuti Gatwa's era and the 60th.
That's crazy.
So, and like the 60th was good. It is feeding into my theory about how like Russell T Davies did want to come back for the 60th, but not for actually show running, and season 1 and 2 were him desperately throwing things at the wall. But if he was doing War Between stuff before, maybe this like he cares. Maybe this is like something with actual substance. It's entirely possible that we get 60th Russell T Davies instead of season 1 and 2 Russell T Davies.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But which Pete McTighe will we get? That's the question.
We're forward in time. We're in April 2026 now, a few weeks out from the anniversary of the reality war. Gig and I are going to have a final, definitive little discussion on that.
No pressure.
The two questions I really want to get into are what the finale did to others and what the finale did to us. So the first question, and I've been going back and forth on this a bit, is was it really a big deal? Like, the finale was bad. Did that mean much? Was everything already kind of set in stone from the series, the first Ncuti series finale, or even earlier than that? Did Space Babies and Church on Ruby Road already set in stone how everything was going to play out in terms of what Russell was doing and how Disney weren't feeling it or whatever? Or was this finale not being great an actual seismic thing? I don't know. What do you think, Gig?
I guess it depends on how you're looking at it. I don't think the finale was the seismic event in terms of Disney and the actual outcome, how the program was faring. I think, as you sort of implied there, the fate of this project and the trajectory of it was pretty much sealed well beforehand, like pretty much, I would say, during season 1, really. And not that much of season 2 really changed things in terms of how it was going. But when it comes to how, well, really the fan base, not so much the wider audience. I mean, what wider audience you could ask, but when it comes to the fan base, maybe the finale was a bit more seismic. And I guess it's just because even though a finale is ultimately just the product of what's come before, for the viewer who's not familiar with what was going on behind the scenes, the finale is the point at which all deniability evaporates. I think we saw this with Ranskorav Kolos in Series 11. I think the finale is the point at which it is revealed that nothing was going anywhere. So until that point, you can kind of delude yourself, well, maybe there's a point to all of this. Maybe it's at least leading to a storyline that's going to culminate in something. Maybe there was a point to all this misdirection or everything. Maybe there was like a project at work here that might still prove interesting or compelling. So when the finale actually hits, and it's a really, really bad finale, and a really not very interesting finale either, that retroactively colours how you view everything leading up to it. And I guess if you had hopes before that point, those are obviously going down in flames. And it's going to cast a really negative pall on virtually everything that came before it. So I think it's fair to say, I mean, especially when it's a finale like Reality War, which isn't just, it's not just bad, it's also kind of been very visibly, ostentatiously sort of messed with kind of in the process through reshoots. There are things that were set up for it that are not there, such as, Susan and so on. I think it does feel a bit, I guess if you're from a fan perspective, it's like a bit of a bomb being dropped. And I think it has contributed a lot to, I guess, a a bad vibe, I guess, if you like, around fandom. But also, by the same token, I guess that is also kind of a product of what's come before, because even if the finale was as bad as it is, if the seasons leading up to it had done more to, I guess, cultivate a good vibe in the fandom, maybe it could have weathered the reality war a little bit better.
I remember in 2018, 2019, since you brought up Rand score, the people were doing this line a lot. It's too early to judge, and even the Rand score didn't have many shooters. It had a few, but it didn't have many. But there was, push the New Year's special will be good. The next season will be good. The next season will be good. It's all going somewhere, and I think you can argue over whether that bore out or not. But there was this genuine sense from the fandom, from not just people who liked Chipu, but also people who didn't like it that much, but were still like, hey, it was one season, or it was one season and a special. This might be going somewhere. We can forgive a bit of a dud finale. There was kind of a sense of, I don't know if forgiveness is the right word, but of grace towards a longer term project.
Yeah, benefit of the doubt, I would say.
Yeah. The reality war wasn't great, but like you're saying, it was clearly messed with, and there was clearly going to be more along these lines. It was clearly building up to at least another series with Ncuti or with Carol Ann Ford and whatever was going to go on there. But I don't see much grace extended to the reality war by much of anyone, really. And this could just be me being out of the loop, but I've read a lot of stuff on this finale, and I've seen some awareness. I've seen a lot of awareness of, hey, that's weird, that it seemed like it was going somewhere and then it didn't. But I'm not seeing much of a sense of, yes, the finale wasn't great, but let's give it some grace because it's too early to judge. It was meant to be going somewhere. Is this just a function of nothing? Like, why aren't people giving RTD some time and going, okay, the Disney thing didn't work out, but maybe another? Is it just because Ncuti left? Why is there no grace towards? Well, he was clearly building towards something.
You brought up the Rand score comparison there, and to be fair, Rand score was Chibnall's first season finale, so people could go, well, maybe it's leading somewhere in the second season. And then, of course, Chibnall's second season happened, and we saw what it was all leading up to, and it was the Timeless Children, and it was it's certainly in my opinion incalculably worse than anything we could have been prepared for. In this case, the reality war is not his first season finale. It's not even his first bad season finale of Disney Who. It's the second one. So it's the point at which, maybe I think a little bit of what you're talking about, the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's going somewhere. I think there might have been a little bit of that for Empire of Death, maybe. But certainly by this point, by the reality war, any of that has run out. Because it's you can't possibly keep making that excuse when you're on the second season. That's the point in which it should start to be showing, what you're doing. You can't just keep kicking it down the road another year, having one crap finale after another. By the time you've had two crap finales just to get to a third hypothetical good one, it's we've done more bad than good at that point. Is it really worth it? Why don't you just watch a different show at that point? So yeah, I think probably the reason we're not seeing much kindness to reality war is more because where it's actually positioned. This is actually the second season.
It's probably really his fourth or fifth bad Doctor Who finale when you think about it as well.
Yeah, yeah. On the full timeline, yes, it's not his second in life. It's just a second in the Disney Who.
This might age very poorly or very well from April 2026 here, but if Russell does get another season working with some other streamer or just with BBC or however it ends up working, I'm so fascinated by this thought of, we know there were scripts developed for the third Ncuti season. Does he drop everything and does he do something completely else? Or will the Pantheon still be around? Will Carol Ann Ford still be in it? I'm just so curious over whether, the loss of a lead actor and then the loss of the producing, distributing partner going means he's going to tear it all up. Or are we going to have these vestigial elements? Because I guess the whole Ncuti era is kind of vestigial to the 60th, which started the Pantheon stuff. If Russell keeps running the show, how much of a longer term project is the reality war still going to be important for whatever comes next? I guess is what I'm wondering.
I would assume if RTD were to continue, then vestiges of whatever scripts they currently have going will get reworked into something else. How many versions did the whole concept for the Orisha go through before it became the well?
Yeah. And
we got Story in the Engine instead. I think things do get reshuffled. And the concept for Dot and Bubble dates back to Matt Smith era, everything like that. I'm sure whatever they have wouldn't just be thrown out. On the question of will the reality war continue to be important, I mean, what in it, what part of it would be important? I mean, they had to pretty much wrap up the entire Poppy plotline that would have presumably carried the whole next season had Ncuti not left, requiring it to be resolved in one go. So yeah, I'm not sure about reality war specifically, but maybe I could see him ill-advisedly continuing Pantheon stuff. You know, I don't imagine, well, I certainly don't imagine he would reset to like an RTD1 style of Who if he kept going. Like, I don't think he can really reset the clock. I think he'd still keep trying to push it in a different direction. Maybe it would look different though. You know, maybe we'd see a different spin on it slightly. You know, yeah.
It's both the first and second Ncuti finales had these family themes and touching on orphan family genes, all that sort of stuff, and some bits of that in Empire we liked, and the bits of it in reality we didn't like so much. There's no way to know, so this is, you know, empty talk, but I'm just curious whether whatever Doctors are next, if he continues running the show, whether he keeps up the kind of family orphan theming, whether with Carol Ann Ford or not. It's I haven't thought about it for a long time, so it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I can't imagine him just suddenly not being interested in those themes anymore just because, you know, the lead actor left and everything got, you know, thrown off the rails. But then, you know, maybe something else could hit him. Yeah, so we can't really predict it that much, but you know, if there was something he really wanted to do, I'm sure he'd do it.
On that note of not thinking about this for a while, you know, we've talked about reality war for hours across many months here, so this is just a slightly indulgent ending, I guess. But hey, we had some very sweet listeners wondering and worrying about us over the last year or so, and so just swirling around all this stuff, I'm just curious for both of us. We've talked about what the reality war did to fandom and, you know, the show's space in general. This feels like a Power of the Doctor group therapy little session here. What did the finale do to you? How do you feel a year on?
Okay, if I have to say it in the most broad terms, I suppose I haven't really... It's not something I've sat down and really dwelled on and thought through to like my core, but if I look at it, I guess from a wider perspective, just like the long kind of stretch of the past year, I have felt, I guess my, it's not all because of reality war, there's other stuff to it, but I have kind of felt my investment in the program and I guess its future sort of dissipating. I mean, there were moments during season 2, well before reality war, when I was like, oh dear, like what are we doing here? Can this continue? But certainly with this year of, I was going to say year of silence, but there has actually been an entire spin-off in that interval. I'm sure we'll talk about that another day. It's certainly in the year since, it has felt like there's not really much further to go. At least I struggle to kind of summon much emotion about like what's going to happen to it. Like, if it comes back, if it doesn't, I'm like, oh, well, you know, we've just... I mean, it's hard to picture, like, a good future for it, I guess, at least in the current environment. I mean, it just feel like it would need to be some bolt from the blue. I don't think it would be impossible. I don't think it's impossible at all for it to be, like, a show I really like and I'm interested in again. I'm not very massively committed to it. I'm not massively invested in that. And certainly in RTD's version of the program, I have pretty much lost faith entirely, unfortunately. I think just the scope and the nature of the things he was trying to do, and I guess the nature of his ideas there, some of the stuff that he may have been trying to do with Susan and Poppy, I'm just like, I don't particularly care to see it realised. So I can sort of be at peace with whatever happens. That's a nice way to frame it. You know, I could be very negative here, but I think using words like peace, I think makes it sound quite positive. So yeah,
I kind of feel like a Mark Fisher-esque kind of. It's easier to imagine an end to Doctor Who than an end to bad Doctor Who. if you know what I mean. Like, since 2018, it's not been great, with a bit of a blip in 2023. We liked those ones, but it's been, it's not long till it's been a decade that we haven't been really loving the show. And as we're both in our 30s now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, as we're in our 30s, New Who started over 20 years ago now. Do you feel a kind of confusion at what we're doing here?
I would say it's not really confusing. I would say I'm sort of come to terms with it. Like, yeah, it's a show from both of our childhoods. And again, it's a show that we have been watching for our adulthoods as well. We've been adults watching the show. I guess we've been kids watching the show. Like, I feel like we're past the point where we're going to get self-conscious about watching the show in our 30s. I would like to think, and still talking about it. I certainly, it's not the kind of, it's not the only thing I want to do in my life, but I'm not super self-conscious or like insecure or anxious about the fact we're doing this.
I agree with that. I happily use the show in my work as well. It's been bad for a long time.
True.
And if this were any other show, after 10 years of it not being great, I don't know. It's a touchstone. There's a great Lawrence Miles quote. I'm sure I'm mangling it completely here, but something about like Doctor Who is sort of his native language, like you were saying, in childhood and adulthood. So much experience of different writers and different conceptions of the show. It's very easy to talk about other things. Both of us, I'm sure, would thoroughly agree with this. It's very easy to talk about other things through the show and through such a web of the show that we have. But it's been bad for a while. And I never want to be the sort of person that complains too much, you know what I mean? Which I think it's important to talk about what we love and the good parts of the show in the past, but I don't have a great feeling about so much of what we like being in the past. And I'm not blaming us, I guess I'm blaming the show and the forces that go into the construction of the show, but I don't know. Am I making any sense there?
Yeah, I guess you are. I was thinking about possible comparisons to this, because I guess from where we're looking at it, certainly when it comes to New Who, series 1 through 10, I guess would be like the point at which we can confidently say this is a good show that we both approve of. And then with Chipper and RTD2, it's kind of like going into the weird zone. So when it comes to having, I guess, a fixed past unit of the show that is very discreetly all done, and it's getting further and further in the rearview mirror, but then it keeps going and going and going, like the show itself, in the direction you don't particularly like. I just feel like, is it a comparison to say like classic Simpsons, for example?
Yeah.
Like Simpsons fans, they have sort of the original seasons of the show that they kind of continually return to, and are really seen as classics. They're constantly recycled as memes in pop culture, but of course the Simpsons is still continuing in some form, and doesn't really get much I guess cultural play, really. I don't know, I'm sure people still watch it, I assume, or they wouldn't make it anymore. But again, it's but it doesn't seem like something that Simpsons fans are enormously cut up about, I guess, at this point. Like, it's been so long that they're just sort of it's just what life is, right? It's a completed thing in their heads, like the classic Simpsons is there.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like that with us and Who, isn't it, at this point?
I think it is still Russell, who I adore a lot of his. I love some of his. I love one of his RTD2 works. I love 73 Yards. No, I like the 60th. I'm sure there's good stuff in the Ncuti seasons I'm forgetting. So I'm not writing him off, but the fact we're back we've litigated this so many times, and so many people have, because what else is there to say? The fact it's still the same person running the show. I guess my self-consciousness is just, I don't want to keep saying the same negative things about the show, but the show is being made by the same person doing the same negative things, and we can all comment on what that says about culture and where we're at, but I'm self-conscious of how repetitive that's getting, both in the show and both to talk about it as well. But, I guess as fans, people who talk about the show, that's part of the bonding experience of going, wow, we sure are going in the same circles a lot, aren't we? So I guess we all have solidarity there. But I guess it's just this odd kind of barnacle on the ship that is the show, is that when we go into the same waters again and again, the water's getting stale in every sense.
Yeah. I think what you're saying there sort of puts me in mind of why it's been so difficult for me to try and, I guess, sort of well, I'm avoiding saying it, but write a blog post about RTD2. You know, I've been putting that off for years at this point, and I think it's partly because of kind of what you're saying there. Like, compared to Chibnall Who, where the badness was kind of fresh and novel and strange in its own way, this weird sort of faceless kind of soul-crushing badness that sort of felt like this weird, strange new intrusion on the show, and kind of seemed emblematic of the fact that kind of a show like this could happen. It felt emblematic of certain patterns in the show, in the fandom, and I guess in society, if you like. Whereas with RTD2, it seems bad in kind of a less interesting way. It feels like the badness with RTD2, and you could put it down to, RTD's weird ideas, his hijinks, his sort of impish decisions and sort of fascinations. You can put it down to that, or sometimes you can just put it down to, I don't know, it just feels like there's less to really dig into, because the reasons it's bad are pretty obvious, and some of them are the same reasons in terms of kind of lack of character art stuff across the show, and kind of it just does seem like there's not much ground to tread. There's not much to really cover. It's I really struggle to kind of say anything that's like worth saying when it comes to RTD2. Like, it's not bad in an interesting enough way to really kind of set my imagination working. So it's a struggle. I think it was a lot more fun ripping. Yeah, it feels bad to say. I'm sure I hurt the feelings of a lot of Chibnall fans in saying this, but it was a lot more fun to rip Chibnall Who apart than it is RTD2. I think especially because, like you say, it's the same. It's still RTD from all those years ago, and we saw him do so much better in the past. So it's frustrating, and it's depressing, basically.
Yeah, the good and the bad and the terrible in the Chibnall era, it often resonated in ways where we weren't just talking about Doctor Who. We could talk about other things through Doctor Who more easily. But I find so much of what there is to talk about with RTD2 is this subject, which I find so incredibly boring, which is like the IP cannibalizing, multiversy, going back to the well, and all that sort of stuff. How many years has like pop culture been drenched in it? I'm just so sick of I'm so sick of watching stuff do this, and I'm so sick of talking about it and hearing other people talk about it. I don't care about the IP recycling stuff anymore, and I feel like so much of watching RTD2 and talking about it just keeps coming back to that same thing of, yes, it's the same people still in control, and they're doing the same things, and we're redoing the same stories. Like, I just want my head out of that space, because it's everywhere. It's suffocating. At least the Chibnall era, yes, it was reflecting stuff going on in the world then, but it wasn't just reflecting stuff going on in the science fiction genre. It was reflecting other stuff as well. You know what I mean? But I feel like so much of RTD2, very much including the 60th, the good and the bad, is just this going in circles thing of culture eating itself, this Ouroboros stuff, which I'm kind of over talking about it.
Yeah, I guess the only part of RTD2 discourse that feels like it's specific to RTD2 in any way, rather than just leached from the rest of sci-fi and fandom and IP and media discourse, is I guess the Pantheon stuff. I feel like there's stuff that could be picked apart when it comes to what he was going for there, and why, certainly in my opinion, why some of it doesn't work as well as it ought to, or as well as it could have. When some of the kind of Neil Gaiman pastiche, which is something which has not aged well, some of that, like in Empire of Death, and some of what he was shooting for with Lux and Maestro and the Toymaker and all of that, why, even though it is an attempt to give the show more identity, paradoxically, I feel like in some ways it sort of saps identity away, like it's lacking in identity. It feels weirdly bland in a way. I think there's something interesting about how that spooled out, which could probably be sort of teased out a lot more. And that does feel like specific to whatever RTD was going for there. And I can't really draw exact parallels with that. But besides that, like everything with the ridiculousness regarding like the Rani fan wank and Loom's fan wank and Susan fan wank, and it's like just yeah, I mean, that's literally just the same kind of discourse and ridiculous legacy sequel discourse that you get with Hollywood films. It's like, and, you know, Amazon Prime TV series and Peacock and Hulu and whatever. It's like, it is really just like the knockoff of other crapness. Like, it's not its own crapness.
Yeah. Where to from here? I want the show to be novel, new, or I want it to be good, or I want it to be both. Any combination of that would be good for me.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I just, any question about what should the show be, or what does it need to be, or what version of the show, what format should it take, what should it do with the Daleks, what should it do with the Cybermen, what should it do with old things, what should it do with new things, who should write it, who should do this? Like, I am completely past having answers to any of those questions. Like, I don't care at this point. I personally would just like it to be good. You know, even if it's actually like a complete trad runaround at this point, like, as long as it was good, I think I wouldn't care. Like, I would just like good television to watch. I truly, total amnesty at this point. Like, as long as it was good, I would just be completely fine with it. Like, whatever. The bar has been so lowered. It's been so long. Nearly a decade, a long decade of hell. Truly, we are different people.
Yeah.
To how we were when this all began in 2018, arguably 2017. Yeah, it's been such a long character arc, and you know, where is it all gonna lead? Who knows? I mean, if all we've got on the horizon is the CBeebies animated spin-off.
It's almost overwhelming to think when we're in our 40s and our 50s, and if we get there, our 60s and our 70s, is the show going to be limping on in some bizarre way, or is it not going to be? Both of those thoughts are terrifying in their own way, I think.
Well, I can't say they arouse much emotion in me. Personally, I'm much more terrified about everything else. I think Doctor Who is like at the bottom of my list of terrifying things, to be honest with you.
I think more in the sense of I'm imagining myself as like a 75-year-old man. You're listening to a podcast on some like future CBeebies version of the show, and it's just it's a fascinating thought to consider.
Okay, yeah, no, it's understandable. Well, you know, I mean, in the event that we're in our 70s and we're still talking about this, I'd like if it was with each other still. that would be reassuring. But, you know, who knows if we'll get there.
More in the immediate sense, as always, I'm always energized about whatever Russell and Moffat are doing next, and they both have shows coming out this year that Russell sounds like in its wheelhouse, so drama to do with gay men and social politics. I assume that'll be good. And Moffat doing a farce about politics, UK politics, sounds like dangerous territory, which is very exciting. I never fail to get energized by what they're doing outside of the Who sphere. Yeah,
I think with Tiptoe and Downing Street, like for Moffat, even though he's described it as sort of press gang in number 10, that's still, in terms of subject matter, that is still a new thing for him. So it does feel like a question mark with Moffat, and we're seeing something from him that we haven't quite seen before. I'm preemptively despairing about the politics that are going to be espoused here, but you know, I'm still very interested to see it. And with Tiptoe, even though that does seem more like RTD just doing his RTD thing again, like another, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So you know, I'm interested in both cases. I'm actually probably a bit more excited for Tiptoe, but I realise I could be brutally disappointed. So I'm always prepared.
Doctor Who extends always into the past as well. I guess there's... Do you have anything where you're like, I'll get to it one day, and you like mean it with like Doctor Who? Like whether it's... I know you did Faction Paradox audios a few years ago. Do you have any like past elements of it where you like genuinely are like, that's probably good, and like one day I think I'll get there?
Probably novels, like more the like Virgin novels, maybe even more Faction Paradox novels, or like Eighth Doctor novels, like anything sort of Lawrence Miles related. Like there's some of those that I think would be cool to get around to. Less so outside of that. I can't say I've felt much interest in Big Finish or anything like that for a few years now. Yeah, there's some stuff probably. Yeah, but again, it's not at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, same really. The wilderness, both the McGann, well, I guess not the McGann, the Eighth Doctor and the Virgin novels. The ones I've read, even the bad ones, have been quite interesting. I think for a lot of Doctor Who fans of a certain level of engagement with Doctor Who have that as kind of the whale that's always there in the ocean to go visit.
I guess it's because there's so many of them, and they're dense in a way. Well, just by virtue of being novels rather than episodes you knock out in 40 minutes, isn't it?
I think I've experienced less of faction paradox than you. I'd love to get more into that one day. I feel like Classic Who has kind of been, the missing episode recoveries have been an amazing, wondrous thing. But I feel like the home releases are kind of tainting it in a way. Like, so much discourse now is about the awful, AI stuff they're doing to the picture of these old classic seasons. And so I used to feel like such a safe zone to me, is that there's always good classic episodes to rewatch. And isn't it cool that even before the collection, they were still doing kind of interesting home release stuff with them, or extra commentaries or whatever. It feels like it's like your childhood home being torn down to kind of taint Classic Who in that way. But what can you do? Yeah,
it is weird. Like the collection releases were, I guess, universally seen as like the good, safe hands, I guess, when it comes to classic. Like, at least that part of the show was being given the proper treatment. So now the horrible, I guess, the weird trajectory of the tech world is sort of snaking its way in there, and you're getting the sort of the AI slop collections, and that's all being infested now. It is getting very awkward around there. It's uncomfortable to think about, but I guess it's a sign that you can't really escape what's going on more broadly. And I mean, if you wanted to be really mean, you could use the whole AI thing as I know some people they used it as symbolic of what RTD was doing with New Who, and kind of the whole show kind of turning into this mishmash, this synthesized tissue generated from sort of half-remembered memories of the classic, rather than an authentic product in itself. But yeah, I mean, it's just I guess it's because everything is ultimately affected by some tendril of the same underlying sickness with the world. Not really a new observation.
Yeah, that's probably a good note to wrap this all up on. We've synthesized all our thoughts. We're like a great AI engine of our own.
Yeah.
Here's to the show returning one day, and hopefully it's interesting and somewhat novel.
Yeah, and otherwise we'll be swimming alone in the future.